Where boots hit the deck, stories take flight. Welcome to the Barracks Life, a podcast that brings you authentic stories from the men and women who've walked the path of military service. So I'm your host, former Sergeant Kit Lovan, and today we have an honored guest here, recently retired Navy SEAL, who served in our nation for over 2 decades in some of the most challenging environments. Now, before we get into your extensive SEAL career, tell us more about yourself, your rank, who you are, where you came from, how you grew up, and what was life, before you joined the Navy.
Yeah, cool. Hey, first of all, thanks for having me. I was born in Ventura, California, and we kind of moved a lot. My parents weren't that wealthy, so we struggled quite a bit. My dad was a hard worker. He was just one of those kind of guys that good enough was good enough. Keep your head down, work hard, don't take too much, and we struggled, but it was good. I had a loving household. My parents were together my whole life. We grew up Catholic. My grandparents were very devout. We lived with them on and off a few times between houses, and so I had a little bit of that foundation. And I was huge into ice hockey, so I got into ice hockey when I was really young. I think a next door neighbor played. I might be smashing a story from my parents with my own experience, but I think I was around 8. And he was a teenager, and I looked up to him. So he came home with a hockey bag, and I was like, "What sport is that?" And my dad's like,
Nice.
"Great, hockey is expensive." They went to play it again sports, did their best to get me hooked up, and played roller hockey for one season. Then I was like, "No, this isn't the deal. I want to play ice hockey. That's the real sport, And loved it, man. That was my whole life. I can sum up my childhood, most of my childhood, as ice hockey. I mean, I was obsessed. I did not much else. My mom would agree. I think she often is like, you didn't really have a normal childhood because I dove so hard into sport and being an elite athlete and trying to go pro that it was my entire life. I had some girlfriends throughout my teenage years and stuff like that, but and I was into music, but the vast majority of my childhood was ice hockey. I wrestled briefly, boxed a little bit, but it was always, if it got in the way of hockey in any way, I was like, nope, not doing it. So anyway, that's a little bit of my brief version of my childhood. And then, so after high school, I was on a couple of really good teams. I was playing AAA hockey, which is like the highest private hockey you can do in California. At that time, I was kind of lucky in like a golden era of California hockey where our teams were actually going to nationals, doing well on like the national stage, beating teams like Minnesota's, elite teams and Michigan's elite teams and stuff like that. We had a close to undefeated season, and 3 or 4 of my players and our goaltender from when I was like 16, 17 all got scouted to go to colleges, go to semi-pro, pro. It was like just a boom of that kind of happening. High school hockey was inducted at that time period as well. It was not great, but it was there, So hockey was gaining speed in California, which it's now declined again, unfortunately, but it is what it is. Yeah, so right after high school, I got invited to Worlds up in Canada. I got scouted for a semi-pro team. Well, it's junior A, but I always say semi-pro because people are like, what's junior A? And junior A is kind of on par with semi-pro and often gets farmed and scouted into the NHL. Played for the Helena Bighorns up in Helena, Montana, and it was the first time away from my parents. I was 18, like fresh, and it was the moment where I realized this is probably it for my hockey career. I'm 5'11", I'm not 6'5", and had elite coaching my whole life, and a lot of these guys in the league were of that caliber. They were as fast as me, as strong as me, but 6 inches taller than me, and so I kind of hit a wall, realized it, and 9/11 happened that season. Obviously, as you guys know, anybody that's listening, anybody that lived through that and was old enough to understand what was going on, impacted me heavily. And because I was in Helena, Montana, it was, state capital. So the National Guard was everywhere. Hockey practice was canceled that day. I remember my mom calling the landline because that's what it was back then. There was no cell phones. I'm old.
Yeah, for you guys that don't know, it's landline,
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
where the wire is connected to your phone.
Yeah, your phone actually is connected to the wall.
Yeah.
But anyway, though, she called and was like, turn on the TV. And I had my hockey bag on my shoulder, getting ready to go to the ice. And it was like hockey bag fell to the ground as I'm watching the second airplane hit, Then throughout that next month, I'm driving to practice. We're going through National Guard checkpoints, stuff like that. And I'm seeing these guys in uniform, and it's inspiring me. It's like, what am I doing with my life? I'm playing in a league where I'm pretty sure this is my limit. This is it. This is probably going to be the highest point for me in my hockey career, maybe unless I get really lucky, and I felt like I wasn't doing anything. I felt I didn't have much purpose. And at this point too, in my faith walk, I had pretty much, I was like a non-practicing Catholic. I think I had my grandmother's rosary, my great-grandmother's rosary, carried that around with me all the time, but I wasn't praying. I wasn't talking to God. I wasn't going to church. I was partying with my hockey team and trying to, pick out girls in the crowd after I got off the ice. Not the most fulfilling life. The life of a 19-year-old idiot. Yeah, so at the end of that season, I ended up, my coach pulled me in the office and was like, hey, we're gonna try to work a trade with you to Tupelo, Mississippi. And I was like, oh, I don't want to go to Tupelo, Mississippi. and so I declined it and I went home and I was going to join the Marine Corps, funny enough. And I was like, I'm going to war. I'm going straight to war. It's the best and fastest way to just get into infantry school, go straight to war. I want to fight. And my dad sat me down and gave me this huge speech about college and other options and not being hasty and all that kind of stuff. And luckily I listened to him. So I did delay going in and I started going to the local community college of the Canyons. They had a hockey team as well, which was not of high caliber again, but all my buddies out there who are assuredly going to listen to this, who are on that team with me, I loved it. It was fun. It just is not high caliber. You guys know what I'm talking about. Anyway, though, had a fun year that year. The next year, I was real bored with college. I wasn't finding something I really wanted to do, and there was a career day at the college, and I had a couple roommates at the time. And one of my buddies came back from the career day and had walked past a Navy booth. And he's like, bro, I'm going to be a Navy SEAL. And I was like, all of us were like, no, you're not. Everybody in the room was just like, it was like that scene in Goodfellas where everybody's laughing at the bar. Yeah, that's fantasy stuff, right? But of course, he's got the pamphlet. He's got a whole goodie bag. The recruiters are really good about that stuff. He's got Navy squishy balls and pamphlets that talk about the SEAL teams with big tridents on the front of it. For anybody listening, the trident is what we call our symbol on our chest, the big gold eagle with the trident and the flintlock pistol. Anyway, so that's on the front of it. It's like, do you have what it takes to fill this uniform type advertising, I think, at the time. And I was hooked immediately again. It was like the same thing I'd seen that kid with the hockey bag. I was like, ooh, this pamphlet, I want to do this. And I'm reading about it too. I'm looking into it back when the internet was super slow. I'm pulling up articles it's the hardest military training. I'm like, hardest? That's what I want to do.
Got him.
Yeah, exactly. And go ahead and stop me if you want to ask something else. I will ramble. Anyway, though, so
I'm enjoying this.
Cool. So yeah, I ended up going back to the same recruiter that I had spoke to previously, because it was one of those combined. I think most of them are, right? They're right next to each other, or some of them they're in the same office.
Yeah.
But it was the Marine Corps recruiting station was right next to the Navy one. And I remember going past, it was a gunnery sergeant, I think. I forget his name. I wish I remembered, because I'd love to get a shout out and talk to him again. But he was like, you're not going to make it through the SEAL training. You're going to be sitting on a ship regretting your life. And he was,
trying to get you to come over.
Trying to get me to switch over to the Marine Corps. And I was like, not me, bro. I'm going to be a SEAL. I'm going to be the one. Yeah, so I got involved, got in DEP, the delayed entry program, and sat and waited for a few months, and ended up going in January 2005. So a couple years, obviously, after 9/11, but we were about 2 years into actually fully declaring war. Yeah, with the intention to hopefully become a SEAL and go right to fight, and get the bad guys that got us and contribute with my generation. Tons of my buddies were going in. Funny enough, the guy that brought the pamphlet home with me that was like, I'm going to be a Navy SEAL, he ended up going, he was a little bit ahead of me. He went through boot camp right before me, a month before me, got into his A school a month before I got into my A school. For everyone listening, that's your little school you have to go into when you get in the Navy to acquire a skill that the Navy can use.
So basically, the Navy gives you a A school and C school just in case the SEALs fail their school.
Correct.
That's the backup plan.
Well, they don't anymore. They used to.
Okay.
So before, the SEAL teams were not a rate. Now it's a rate.
Oh.
SO is a job now.
Okay.
It is an A school technically, and then SQT, I believe, is a C school. So, but it used to be just a special C school period, the whole program. So you had to go through a regular A school, pick a rate. So I was an AO. I had no idea what that was. I was just like, it was short. It was short though. I saw that it was only 5 weeks, and I was like, give me that. So, aviation ordnanceman.
That's what it was. So you're in Pensacola then?
Yeah, I was in Pensacola.
Yeah, I was there.
And I just trained my butt off the whole time I was there. Didn't really care much about the actual AO school because in my mind,
you're like,
I was going to be a SEAL. It doesn't matter. None of this matters. I'm learning about like the Brew 32 Brom rack, which is like that's like the only thing I remember from that school, and how to put missiles, how to put warheads on foreheads.
Yeah, that's like, that was their saying over there.
Yeah, the instructors back then were super motivated, but the base was amazing. It was shared with the Marine Corps, all the Airmen Marine Corps rates, or MOSs. And so it was cool. They would, I'd see guys on the beach training. I was doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at the time, like dabbling in it, going to schools and stuff like that. So I would train on the beach with the guy. We'd like wrestle on the beach and beat each other up and like run around with logs on our heads and stuff and just do nonsensical crap that we thought would help because some of those guys wanted to go recon. There was a few other guys in my A school that wanted to be SEALs, SWIC and EOD as well. So yeah, we were all kind of training there. We gathered like a little group together. It was cool. I just listened to metal music and worked out and, did my minimum Navy class time. And then, from there, went straight to Buds. To go back to my friend, though, the one that originally brought the pamphlet home, he was like a little bit ahead of me. He went to Buds, and before week 1 even started, he got out of the pool in the middle of a swim and was like, I quit. I'm done. I'm not doing this. So he never became a SEAL. I believe he did his minimum 4 years and got out, and like I've never spoken to him since. But we can get into a fun story about him later, which I won't call his name out specifically, but if he ever hears this, he'll know who I'm talking about. We're not friends anymore. Anyway, yeah, that is the quick version, surprisingly, of my road into the Navy and becoming a SEAL. From there, I went to Buds. I actually originally came into class 258 and got injured in Hell Week, third day of Hell Week. So I had to start at day 1 again with class 259 and do it all over again, which was super cool. But the cool thing about that was I kind of have, I made pretty good friends in 258 and 259 during that time. So it was kind of cool to have that dynamic of the guys that were ahead of me, knowing a few of them that made it and stuff like that when I made it with 259. So that's that, man.
That's kind of crazy. I mean, I was at Pensacola as well. We saw the Navy there. We trained a lot, and it was obviously a very different time when you were in Pensacola than I was in Pensacola.
Yeah, what time were you there?
Man, I was there in 2012 and 13.
Okay.
It was way after you. And when I was there, the Marines have messed it up a lot, the prior Marines.
Oh, really?
We were getting into a lot of trouble.
It's locked down.
Yes, we got seriously locked down. Like, I'm talking, like, there's stories on stories on stories, and I'm sure you probably witnessed some of it or heard some of it.
I mean, that's the wartime thing, right? I mean, guys get rowdy during time of war. It's just the way it is.
There was a story of Marines going to Toys R Us and holding it down with those little Nerf guns.
Wow.
And actually, like, security getting called in.
People thinking it's real. Yeah. And they're like...
And these Marines are just getting crazy.
Supermoto.
Yeah, supermoto. So just dumb stuff.
Yeah, like, I love Marines, man.
And they're just getting really drunk. And they're just getting crazy. Because Pensacola was known as the unicorn place to go.
Oh, it's a beautiful base. Yeah. For anybody who's never been there, and for any prospective Navy and Marines that are going to go airman rates in the Navy, it's a beautiful base. Yeah. I loved that place, man. It was awesome.
It's also a party place as well.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Club La Vila. Oh, no. That's I'm thinking of Panama City.
Like I said, I wouldn't know. Because I was locked down. Like when we were, what I mean locked down is like we had to walk everywhere in uniform, like even on base, everywhere in uniform, everywhere in formation. You had to be at a buddy system.
Dang, no way.
Everywhere. It was.
That was not the case when I was there.
And every minute of our day for the 16-hour day that we had was taken up with something because they had to hold accountable for every single Marine.
Oh, wow.
Because we were just going buck wild over there.
Yeah.
So the Marines before us ruined it for us. So I don't know how it is now, obviously, because I haven't been there well. But
the Marines and the Navy are really good at. I think I would say the Army is too at knee-jerk reactions.
Yes.
So whenever a big bad incident happens, there is a harsh and swift knee-jerk reaction to correct the action and also make things really bad for everybody else.
Let's go high and to the right.
For a while, it just sucks, and then it cools down eventually, depending on how bad the incident was.
If you guys just came out of Pensacola, I want to know what it was like because
Yeah, for sure.
it was really bad for me. I'll tell you what, it was really bad for me. Other than that, the facilities was great. The food, the chow hall was amazing.
One of the best, I think one of the best chow halls I've been
Yeah,
in
I think-
my entire 20
Yeah,
years.
same. I mean, not
Yeah.
20 years, but it's wherever I've been. Like,
Yeah.
best food.
Yeah, for sure. And a huge dessert bar, if I remember right, like
Unlimited
frozen
pasta,
yogurt and
yeah,
stuff. Like, it
that
was
and
just
unlimited
insane.
pasta bar as well.
Yeah, and the coffee was actually decent. It wasn't like Folgers.
It was good. It was good.
Yeah. Oh, and then I guess to bring back around my faith walk during this time, I had far strayed even worse. Like it was definitely, by the time I get to Buds, I was a completely, almost atheist, I would say.
Oh,
So, yeah, because I kind of skipped over that, kind of talked about like the bullet
yeah,
points.
that's where I was going to get into.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry.
No worries. Go for it. You,
But,
you beat me to it.
But for me, it was during that time period, I was definitely exploring like tons of different stuff. So to rewind a little bit, in high school, I had questions for sure. I was like going through confirmation in the Catholic Church, and the priests were not the greatest where I was going. Once again, I won't dime out the church specifically. Hopefully, it's better. But I had some pretty basic questions, and I was a jerk teenager too. I'd ask stuff like,
Most of us
"Can
are.
Can God make a boulder he can't lift?" And they're like, "Well, of course." Wait, what? No? And I'm like, "Yeah, it's a conundrum. Ha, gotcha. If God can make it, then he can't lift it, so he can't do anything." That whole nonsense. I was a jerk. But anyway, they didn't really have answers for me. They didn't deal with it very well. So that time period, I started exploring other stuff, and I started seeing some linking between other religions. I mean, for a while, I think I considered myself Buddhist, and then I got really into Eastern religions and stuff like that. Went down that whole rabbit hole. Got into martial arts too, so that was like almost like a gateway drug to those other religions and stuff. And I'm not talking bad about them. I'm just that was where my head was, and then. Yeah, just exploring tons of different stuff. My heritage too, so like Irish and Scottish mythology, Norse mythology, stuff like that from my my background and stuff like that too. So I was looking into all those things, and I was like, man, how are all these people wrong? And Christianity is the only one that's right, And I started going down those paths and exploring different stuff, and then I found. I think it was Richard Dawkins or Sam Harris. I don't remember which one. During that time period, it was like 2006. So whoever was prominent at that time writing like atheist literature, somebody at some point handed me one of their books. And I dove into that. I'm a big avid reader, always have been. Normally fantasy and science fiction, which is hard to admit on a podcast, but whatever. I'm a huge nerd. But anyway. But yeah, I pepper in nonfiction and, leadership type books, mentorship stuff, and try to expand my mind and technology and stuff like that. But in between my nerdness, but I started going down that rabbit hole, and then I became. By the time I got into SEAL teams, I was definitely the guy that my whole goal in life, if I found out you were a Christian or any religion, not just Christian, was to make you not be that by the end of our conversation. And be sad about it and like crush you. I was I was a complete jerk.
You were that guy.
Absolutely that guy. Like, the joke of how do you know there's an atheist in the room? Don't worry, he'll tell you. Like I was that guy.
You were that guy.
I was the memeable dude that you could absolutely be like, that he's the reason that saying exists, But anyway though, so that's where my faith walk was, or lack thereof at that time.
So you're going through Buds, right? With a lack of faith, then what do you think got you through Buds? Just pure
pride.
Just pride.
Pride.
Your
100%.
athletic background, just pure grit.
Yeah, I mean, I had there was some deep-seated foundational stuff from Catholicism that was obviously rooted in me that I can't really deny. And it was still there even though I was denying it, right? And then there's also my father who was, like I said before, was that keep your head down, work hard.
Yeah, just grind.
No matter what, just grind and good things will come to you kind of person. So I had that kind of ingrained in me too. My mom was super motivating and positive all the time too. I think most people's mommies are, but she's like, you can do anything, sweetheart, And at that time, granted, I'm definitely looking into much more of like like humanistic, no religion. There's no like through Christ I can do all things at all. It's like my mom told me I could do it, and I have great determination. So therefore, I am God, and I can do
Right.
this on my own because there is no God.
You
You know,
just self, right? Individualism,
Correct.
self. I'm God. I'm doing this. I'm getting through it. This is me,
Oh, yeah.
all me, all me.
Which, as we go through some more things that happen later in my life, you'll see that that is not the
Right.
case, like at all.
As we all find out, and
Oh man,
you walk this Christian walk or follow Jesus, we all start to realize that it's nothing like that. It all makes full circle. I mean, I've learned it. I'm sure if you've learned it, that it is
the hard way.
The hard way, especially, it is a huge full circle. It's a slap in the face.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, the big thing too is so much of my life for the decade and a half was conflict and struggle that I didn't realize really what the core of it was. I continuously blamed outside things, right? It was like, oh, this woman screwed me over because she's a bad person. Now, whether that was even true or not, granted, she could have been, but there was no self accountability. There was no like, what did I play? What part did I play here? And there was no repentance. So therefore there was no repentance, right? So there was no accountability whatsoever. Like in the SEAL teams, I was good. Like if you tasked me with something in the platoon and I messed it up, I'd be like, oh, I messed up. I'll never do it again. I'll learn. And I had accountability there, but that's where it stopped. The rest of my life, like my personal life and everything else, totally fell apart. And my relationship with my parents, for like no reason too. They didn't do anything bad to me. I just was like, screw you guys. And same with my sister. I mean, everybody kind of ghosted everybody for a long time and just dove hard into being a SEAL.
Right.
But so that was the beginning of the fall of like, the positive things going on in my life. I think, graduating SEAL training and becoming a SEAL was like one of the last great achievements that I really made. Because I don't know if you saw when I sent over my thing, I just retired as a first class, as an E6. It's not where you should be after 20 years, right? So,
Right.
Granted, I didn't get in trouble. I wasn't like the drinker that got in trouble all the time and like lost rank or anything like that. But I had a very, very troubled outside of the military life that totally constricted my career. Some of it outside of my power. But once again, I didn't take that full responsibility and bring it back to center and that Christ foundation that I was totally not present. So just steamrolled and
Right.
just turned into like me trying to keep my head barely above water. And that's what it was for years. And then by the time I came back around to it, I had like 4 years left in the Navy, and it was like, damn, I'm on this great path and I'm doing everything great, but it's a little late, So, but yeah.
That's very eye-opening for a lot of people. Like people don't see this kind of side of Navy SEALs or even just military members in general. People are holding a lot of things in. Is it okay if we talk about some of those things on you don't have to drop any names, the culture in the Navy SEALs? Obviously, you guys have your team, right? We had it too in the Marines. We had our work culture, but then there was also an outside culture. And then even within that outside culture, there was individualistic culture as well. There were almost like three fronts that you had to fight. And I wondered if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. With now, obviously I'm retired, so I don't have any connection to making the SEAL team sound some kind of fluffy thing. I'm not a recruiter. And I want to say this in the most loving way possible because I love my community. I love the SEAL teams. I love a lot of the brothers that I served with, and they were fantastic. However, there's a ton of toxic culture in the SEAL teams and just in the military in general.
Correct.
Right. The idea of the drunken sailor has been, since time immemorial. I think there's probably cave drawings of sailors drinking out of ale, right? I'm just joking, but you know what I mean. It's like literally a thing. It's been a thing forever. There are literal historical ancient writings of sailors getting hammered, going into port, and like creating havoc for thousands of years, right? So, yeah, that's definitely a thing to this day. And the Navy does a really good job holding people accountable for the most part. They do their best.
Right.
And so do the SEAL teams. The SEAL teams does a good job. There are those morally straight guys that are holding the line. However, just like we touched upon this earlier, right? The chaos, you were talking about the Marine Corps. And I think when it comes to time of war, there's this weird dichotomy that the upper echelon of the military wants out of a lower level combatant in the military. What they want is they want a monster when you go overseas. They want you to be a beast, destroy the enemy, crush, complete the mission, and just be ruthless and awesome at everything that you do. And then they want you to come home and put on a suit and tie and look like a perfect gentleman. Those things are very contradictory. Not to mention now you pepper in PTSD, operator syndrome. Now is I don't know if you've looked into that at all, but it's like a more encompassing. It's a term being thrown around. It's like a more encompassing diagnosis of PTSD. It's not just PTSD. It's like tons of other stuff like traumatic brain injuries and all kinds of other things lumped into being a frontline combatant or a job that does that kind of thing. So now you throw that in there and unhealthy coping and stuff like that. And you expect these guys to come home and just be perfect gentlemen. And that's a recipe for disaster, I think, if you don't have really good foundations in my opinion, in Christ.
Right.
Now, granted, most companies and most organizations can't just outright do that. They can't just outright implement Christianity as like here's the healing factor. But for me, that's exactly what it did. And I think that is the healing. That is big part of the salve for a lot of those things. But yeah, until we get way better at that kind of stuff, I mean, that's really a huge issue. Anyway, going back to the culture, we have a split culture in the SEAL teams. There's a saying that was said to me really early in my career when I didn't have a family yet. And I remember making fun of the guy who did, but it was like one of my buddies was like, you're either a really good SEAL or you're a really good dad. And I like remember laughing at the dude who was like, I'm going home. I'm not going to hang out after work with you guys because I have to be with my wife and kids. And we were like, loser, and that was like, we were joking, but it was half not joking, right?
But not really.
We would all go out and create further fellowship and brotherhood together, and he wasn't there, right? And that the next day, that creates all these inside jokes that we have from the night before. He's not part of them. It slowly alienates those people.
Yeah.
And then I had my first daughter at 27. And that changed, right? Like immediately, I'm a dad now. I'm in that category. And crazy, I love my daughter. I look at her and I'm like, I want to be a dad. I love my kid. I'm never going to leave her, right? So I had that feeling immediately. I'm never going to be that deadbeat father, right? I don't want to just be gone all the time and somebody else raises my kid. So I became that guy immediately. I became the dude that goes home right away as soon as work's over with. I mean, I would stay and do stuff that needed to get done, but I wasn't like the cut out early guy. But yeah, if the dudes were going out, I'd do it once a month, maybe once every few weeks. I'd go out with the dudes, but for the most part, I was like, I'm gonna go home and be with my wife and kid, man. I'm gonna be a father, and that did not go well. I started seeing that trend being turned on me, and I was like, oh, great. I used to be part of that other side of the culture, So that's kind of how the culture is in the teams. There's a big, heavy drinking culture, and there are guys that don't, but they'll go out with the guys still and like contribute to the chaos. And funny enough, now I know there is a big Christian network within the SEAL teams as well, but I had no idea back then.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Because I was an outwardly, openly anti-Christian dude. So like anybody that was in the room with me when they heard me blow up and get on my soapbox, TED Talk with Blake Lowe, anybody that was around that was Christian was like, oop, don't talk to that guy.
They couldn't handle you.
Yeah, right? Unless they were like an apologist, you know what I mean? Unless they had like a theology degree,
right.
I would smash them.
They couldn't get on your level there.
I had been diving into all these atheist arguments, right? So I knew the buzzwords to say. I knew how to cherry pick the Bible and do these like, hey, what about suffering kind of thing, and just make people's arguments fall apart. Unless they were super intelligent, which I just never really encountered that. So yeah, unfortunately, it kept me even further. My own stupid actions kept me even further away from that world that did exist. But yeah, so I guess there are three, right? There's like parents in the SEAL teams. There's the guys that are just gung-ho Navy SEALs through and through. It's their whole life. It's their whole identity. Don't recommend it, but there's those guys, parents, fathers, and then there's, the Christian SEAL, I guess. But I didn't have that much encounter with that. It was only like my last 2 years in the SEAL teams that I was actually Christian, or 3 years. So I barely dipped my toe into that network. But yeah, unfortunately.
I can say the same thing in the Marine Corps. We have the same culture. We make fun of the guys that leave the culture early. They want to go home, hang out with their family. Oh, you blah 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 blah. You're leaving this
turd.
That. Yeah, you turd. Come hang out with the boy. And sure enough, next day we're making all these jokes and things that happen. And see what happened. You missed out and this and that.
And even if you don't mean to, that person ends up alienated.
Right.
For sure. It slowly pushes them out. And, and then when you come up for, I don't know how it is in the Marine Corps, but in the SEAL teams, it's like you come up for a leadership position. You're sitting in a room with a bunch of dudes that are all in the Good Old Boys Club together. The
Good Old Boys
Club. They're all interviewing you, and they're like, in the back of their mind, they're like, this is one of those dudes that didn't hang out with us all the time. Screw him. And they picked the guy who did. And I definitely encountered that. I'm not blaming the SEAL teams per se. I could have balanced the two lives much better, and I didn't. Could have played the game a little bit better. I could have been a little more political and jockeyed for myself better. So I don't want to blame the teams or that culture, because I still could have worked it, and I didn't. I chose to be like, screw that.
Right.
I'm a dad. I took this hard line of like, oh, there's good SEALs and there's good parents. Well, I'm a good parent. Screw you then. That wasn't the greatest tack to take. And that's not even getting into the real reason I didn't rank up. But
I want to know about that. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, well, we can get into it, man. It's not a fun story, but
there's been times in the Marine Corps too for me that I postponed my ranking as well. We can get about that for myself, but I'll let you go first. Let's hear about it.
So yeah, after my first 6 years into this SEAL teams, and my kids were really little, or maybe it could have been more like 8 years and 7 years, something like that. I was a first phase BUDS instructor. So now I'm back in the SEAL teams. They make you kind of you do 4 or 5 years at a deployable command. So at a SEAL team. And then you're in a platoon, you're deploying. And then you rotate for 2 years, sometimes 3, to a training command. So like advanced training command where SQT is done, basic training command where BUDS is, or TRADET, which is training detachment. That's the detachment of training that actually trains the SEAL teams, the actual platoons. So yeah, so ATC and BTC are students and they're trying to be SEALs. And then TRADET is active SEALs that are getting trained up for a mission or a deployment. So I had rotated to BTC at this time. I was first phase. So I was doing Hell Week, all, kind of the fun stuff as far as on the instructor side. Lose your voice there almost every day kind of instructor. And
how many years were you doing that for?
I did that for 2 years.
2 years, wow.
But in the middle of that, though, I was in my second year, within almost 2 years of having done that, and I was working Hell Week, and it's a 24-hour a day thing for the instructors. So we have this rotation. Bravo shift is the middle of the night, and I loved Bravo shift. So it was like the sun went down, Bravo shift started. It's like nighttime is the right time, boys, and it was my favorite shift. So I always took the midnight shift overnight. And this particular Hell Week, at this point I had done like 8 Hell Weeks. I'm like a veteran instructor doing this over and over again now. And I come home from one of those shifts and nobody's at my house. Both my kids aren't there. My son's like 2, my daughter's almost 4, and maybe a little bit older than that. And then my wife's not there. And I'm like, what's going on? It's like 6 a.m. Why would they not be here? None of them are in school. My wife doesn't work. What the heck? So I start searching around the neighborhood. I'm talking to neighbors. I'm knocking on doors. I'm making calls. I'm like, checking hospitals. I'm like, what is going on? And an hour or so into like panicking and freaking out and not being able to find them because my wife's not answering her phone either. I get a call, and it's the fire department. It's a firefighter. He's like, hey, man, don't panic. I have your children. They're perfectly fine. Your wife's under arrest, and we're up at blah, blah, blah hospital up in Oceanside. And I'm like, Oceanside? At this time I'm in Coronado, San Diego. So that's a little bit of a drive. It was like 45-minute hour drive up North County. So I'm like, what the heck are they doing up there? But he couldn't really give me any details over the phone. He's like, hey man, I usually call CPS in this situation, but I saw your kit bag in the back of your vehicle and your daughter knew your phone number. So she was like repeating it over and over again. I had it on a chalkboard at home, like as an emergency number they should remember. So I was like, good girl.
What a good girl.
Yeah, good kid. But
I'm going to take that note and write that down.
She's still like that, literally. But anyway, though, so she's like, my daddy's numbers, blah, blah, blah. So he's like, cool, just come up here. No big deal. No harm, no foul. We'll give you your kids and, you can talk to your wife. But she's like handcuffed to the bed kind of thing. And I'm like, what is going on? So I get up there, and of course I get approached by the police right as I get to the hospital. They make sure I'm not like going to go crazy on her or anything. And they, let me see the kids. And they tell me the story. So essentially she fell asleep at the wheel, crashed in the median, no other cars involved, flipped the car. My daughter unbuckled my son out of his car seat and crawled out of a broken window and went to the side of the road, waved an old lady down.
Wow.
And the old lady called 911 and got the fire department there.
Shout out to your daughter.
Yeah, right. And they ended up having to EpiPen my wife, who had OD'd. So I guess we could go quick backstory on me. In high school, I was straight edge. For anybody that doesn't know what that is a weird movement that kind of started in the late 80s. Could be a little earlier than that. My perfect history on it's not great, but there's a whole music scene surrounding it in the hardcore music scene. I'm still a hardcore kid to this day, but I was straight edge for like my entire life. Never drank, never smoked, never did drugs. And then in the SEAL teams, I was the first time I ever drank, but I still was never really a heavy drinker. So very, very like naive when it comes to drugs. I kind of still am. I've done a bunch of research since this incident, but at the time I had no idea what like red flags were for people using drugs or anything like that. So like a caveat, because when I tell people this story, they're like, how did you not know?
Right.
But turns out my wife had been doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. She got into it because of me. She hurt her back at one point and got prescribed some opiates. I forget what it was for like neck and back pain. And then they cut her off and she was like, I am still in pain. And obviously unbeknownst to me at the time, it's very addictive. So like, it wasn't that she was in pain so much, but it was also that she felt like she chemically needed this stuff, right? So she started finding other ways. She started getting pills from neighbors. She started finding out we had, other wives in the neighborhood that were already hooked on stuff like that would share pills with her and stuff. And anyway, we had a credit card I didn't know about that she was racking up. But anyway, super fun stuff. But she ended up getting heroin and, as another way to kind of quell this need. And so she had a dealer that she was recommended up in Oceanside. She had gone up there, gotten high, left the kids in the car strapped in, and then got back in the car, drove home, nodded off at the wheel. So she didn't really fall asleep. She just took too much and nodded off. And so, yeah, that was a huge shock for me, man. It was like, and granted, I didn't know all these details at the time. At the time, it was like the cops just knew that she had OD'd on something and they had to EpiPen her to wake her up. Mm-hmm. And she's under arrest for child endangerment and a bunch of other charges. And she had stuff on her. Like she had a little kit on her too. So it was like obvious what she had taken. Yeah. So for me, I was like shocked. I was like, what? She had some struggles before. She had a pretty bad postpartum after my daughter was born. Kind of that had that same thing again when our son was born, but I didn't know how bad it was. I was just like, and I was focused on the SEAL teams and my kids so much that it was like, I thought she was fine. I'm just like, I was kind of just like trucking through life thinking, I've got this 4-piece family and everything's great. Meanwhile, she's struggling hard and I had no idea. And I mean, granted, she was keeping a lot of it locked down herself as well. And there were red flags that I can look back now and go, oh my gosh, that's definitely, I should have seen that. But, hindsight's 2020. So,
right.
But yeah, so that was huge, man. That whole incident, I got my kids, brought them back down to the house. And then it was like, what am I doing here? She's like going to trial. She's being prosecuted and ended up doing, I think she got 5 years. She only served 2, I believe it was somewhere around that. But for me, it was like, okay, I guess I'm filing for divorce. And like, I mean, I was mad. Of course, I was angry. I didn't have that foundation of Christ, so I wasn't looking at like resolving the marriage and keeping things together and stuff like that. I was just like, kids first. Kids need to be protected. I need to take care of them. That's my job. I'm their dad. She's got a problem and she can't be a parent. So it was pretty cut and dry. I, showed up to court. The judge was like, boom, 100% custody, physical and legal. And she didn't even really fight it. She was like, I am messed up and I can't give my full all to these kids. And, tons of other stuff came out with her and she's still struggling to this day. She still kind of lives on and off the street, still is using, but she tries to see the kids intermittently on their birthdays and stuff like that. She still has no custody and no visitation, but she calls them now and then. They're teenagers now, so they're They're fully aware of all the stories. They know what's going on. I've framed it as like they were the heroes of the situation, through their upbringing. And yeah, I got them with a therapist because I was like, what do I even do here? But when it came to my career, it was like, I go to my chief and he's like, dude, you're undeployable. Like you can't. And I'm like, what do you mean? Yes, I can. I'm going to call my parents and my parents will watch my kids while I go back into platoon. Meanwhile, I'm literally in negotiations to go to SEAL Team 1 and get my LPO spot, my leading petty officer spot, which is the requirement to make chief. I was a first classer. I just made, well, not just made first class, but I was first class for like 2 years. And I was in line to go. I mean, once again, I'm not going to drop names, but the chief at the time I was real good friends with him. We were into combatives together. We loved fighting and stuff like that. So, and the SEAL teams had just gotten rid of its like martial art from the 90s that was a total scam. This guy, Dwayne Dieter, I'll drop his name. He's a complete idiot, but he somehow convinced the Navy that his martial art was like the end all be all, amazing martial art. The Navy signed on and like had a contract with him for like however many years. Mm-hmm. So it was the SEAL team's hand-to-hand combat martial art for years. And the contract had lapsed. So a bunch of the teams got together, team guys got together, MMA fighters got together, and we recreated the system basically, real world experience and real fighters and stuff like that, and came up with combatives, which is what it's called now. We have different levels and all that kind of stuff. It's great now. But anyway, I had bonded with that chief through doing that whole process because I loved fighting. And he's like, yeah, man, come over and be my LPO at Team 1. And I'm like, sweet. I'm like slated to go do it. And the accident happens. And they were like, no way. You got to take a knee. You're not going to be an LPO. Like your kids just went through this traumatic incident. You've just gone through this traumatic incident. Like you need to pump the brakes. And I was pissed. And I wanted to get my parents involved and have them help me out. My mom gets diagnosed with breast cancer.
Oh man.
Literally the same month. And it's in her lymph nodes. It's in both breasts. She's getting full mastectomy, lymphectomy, going through chemo, like full on treatment. And I'm like, great. Selfishly, like, of course,
Yeah.
when I need him the most, total jerk. After kind of blackballing him for like, almost 10 years, total selfish idiot. Anyway, though, that totally didn't work out. So it was like, hey, you're going to go to LOGSU, Logistics Support Unit, which is the regular Navy guys that support the SEAL teams. And I went over there as a QA, quality assurance and safety advisor, which is a chief position, which was, I guess, kind of looks good on my resume or whatever on my evals, but doing the work of a level of a chief. But it wasn't being a Navy SEAL. I was evaluating safety, evaluating training, doing quality assurance checks, going from team to team and like observing fast roping, for example, and making sure that all the parameters were in place. They were using proper, Navy approved equipment and blah, 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 ORM, risk management stuff. Going over all the ORMs and making sure they were all good and updating them if needed. And it was a very boring job, but it was good that the SEAL teams were willing to kind of stuff me in that position while I was going through. I look back and I'm like, I'm thankful for that time, but I was not thankful then. Then I was bitter, frustrated. I wanted to get back in a platoon and go kick doors and get the bad guys, do what I came into SEAL teams to do. So yeah, unfortunately, that whole time period set me back like, 2 whole platoons basically. I mean, I sat at LOGSU for another 2 years sat at LOGSU for a year, then got billed over to TRADET. So I went from a training command to a halfway real command back to a training command because it was like my family still wasn't put together. I hadn't gotten remarried or anything. And I had no backup plan. So it was like I had to go home every day to my kids. They were in daycare and I had to go home and be a dad every day. So yeah, man, that was the single dad in the SEAL teams, man. It was very rough. It was very frustrating at the time. I'm sure both my kids can speak to my anger levels at that time period. I had some unresolved stuff from deployments that I hadn't really dealt with, and also bitterness and frustration from not being right back in a platoon and not going with the guys. And the dudes would come back from, I was at TRADET at the end of this and putting platoons through training that were going to go deploy and hearing stories from the guys that had just got back and stuff like that. And I'm just like frustrated the whole time and mad. And of course, this frustration is bleeding into my job. So nobody that works with me is like loves working with me either because I'm just like this bitter jerk. So not a great, it was a bad spiral. It was a bad domino effect. And, you know, blaming the ex a lot. Like, you know, how could she do this to the family? How could she, you know, abandon us and pick drugs over her kids? And of course, I'm super dad. You know, I'm like the guy, the knight in shining armor that came in and saved the day. But in reality, I had a lot of stuff to work on myself. But, and at this point, still no reconnection with the Lord.
Right.
Still nobody had like grabbed my hand and gone, hey, let's go to church, man. Or let's crack open the Bible or whatever. Nobody had really done that. And I don't know if I would have listened anyway.
Right.
I mean, maybe with the right touch. I don't know.
With the right tact, maybe.
Yeah.
But no one was willing to do that for you.
Oh man, I'm so
way that
loud
you
and
were.
aggressive, dude. I'm still loud and aggressive. But yeah, I don't think I'm the most approachable person, or I wasn't back then. Now I'm way better with it now, and I know how to like curb my enthusiasm, I guess. Yeah, man, that was a rough time, a super rough time. It was a huge struggle. I didn't really have the greatest support from my parents, but for obvious reasons, not because they couldn't, but not because they didn't want to, but because they couldn't. And then I had kind of alienated my relationship with my sister, so that wasn't really an option there either. And yeah, I just kind of sucked into myself and was like, I got to be a dad, and I did everything I could to be, you know, do the best with that, and everything else fell to the wayside and kind of fell apart.
Thank you for sharing that, man. Thank you for being vulnerable and really rough what you had to go through and what you did go through, and kind of stepping up to the plate and being the man that you had to be with the situation that you were given. It was rough what you had to go through. And looking back on it, I'm sure you would have done it a lot differently, having the information that you have now. But everything happens for a reason, right?
For sure.
We all know that now. We all believe that now. And it says it in the Bible as well. Yeah, everything happens for a reason. And if we grow from it and we learn from it, and it's there to help someone or help you out.
But yeah, I just, I didn't have the foundation though. So I didn't see any of that at the time. It was just like, hey, get my kids in therapy. I was doing the secular route of everything, kind of like the Navy had a bunch of stuff too, like the Focus. They had Navy Focus was really good. That was where we all went. So me and the kids would go and talk to a therapist. And it was good, man. It helped me bond with them and stuff like that. There was still something missing. And it was funny too. So since my kids were born, I had on the fridge the low family values. And they're basically like, if you took the commandments and like almost everything, like moral standards from the Bible, and put them into secular language, that's basically what I had done. I just didn't really acknowledge that. And so that's how I was raising my kids. I was really raising them with biblical values and Christian values. I just would deny that was the case. I'm like, you can figure this out on your own. Anybody with a brain can know that, like, you know. Anyway, I had all kinds of arguments for why it was just the right thing to do, and you didn't need God and you didn't need Christianity to define that, right? Which, of course, at the time, I really didn't have any concept or grasp on moral relativity, which is really one of the things that brought me back when I started digging into that a little bit later in my life, you know, in the last 5 years, where I was like, okay, so if you're secular, you know, you're atheist, agnostic, whatever, or you just don't care, what is your moral foundation for anything? Like, why do you think the A is right and B is wrong?
Correct.
And no one has an answer. Well, the only answer is because it is.
But where does that
It's
start?
just wrong.
Right. Well, how do
and
you
I'm
know
like,
that?
well, what you're talking about though in this country is not wrong. It's not illegal.
Correct.
And it's totally fine. So why is it wrong here? And they're like, you know, they can't really define it. So when I started digging into the Christian foundation that really our country, Western civilization has really been, you know, built upon, and a lot of our Constitution is rooted in it, even though people falsely quote the, you know, Thomas Jefferson's letter where he says the separation between church and state. That's not in the Constitution. That's a letter from Thomas Jefferson to somebody else. And he wasn't even really referring to the fact that like religion shouldn't influence anything. That's not what he was saying. He was saying that religion shouldn't be stopped and suppressed, right, by a government. Like we should be free. Anyway, and I tend to agree with that. But anyway, I don't mean to get into like politics and stuff like that. It's just stuff that fires me up, I guess. But anyway, though, I hadn't dug into any of this, so I hadn't really tested my own convictions. I hadn't really looked into why I believe these things. And now some people could easily say, oh, the only reason that you came back to Christianity is because of your Catholic foundation. And of course you had all these things underlying your life because you were basically raised Christian. And to that I say, I completely disagree. Now, I mean, granted, it was ingrained in my culture. It's ingrained in all of our culture. Like a lot of American cultures is Christian, whether you want to admit it or not. And much of our opulence is because of Christianity. So that argument is kind of silly because there's lots of people that grew up the same as me that are not religious at all and died not religious at all. So I disagree there. What really brought me back were, and this is why I brought notes. So a couple concepts. One, not being able to do everything alone. And the whole God complex thing, right? Like automatically. And of course, I already stated no moral foundation, moral relativity. That started itching at me. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Yeah, that's true. How do we define good and evil without a foundation? And then not being able to do everything alone. That was something that I think was ingrained in me in the SEAL teams, while also I was missing the message, right? Like team is huge in the SEAL teams. We literally call it the SEAL teams, and we don't call each other SEALs when we refer to each other. We call each other team guys. That's the term we use. Hey, you're like, oh, is he a team guy? Oh yeah, I think he's a team guy. Like nobody says, is he a SEAL in the SEALs? So we use the word team constantly, and that is the foundation of the entire community, acknowledging that we can't do everything alone, right? Like it's all about the team. There's no such thing as Rambo, right? We have a saying in the SEAL teams: one is none and two is one. Which I mean, I think there's a Bible quote that's almost exactly like that. Or here, right here, Ecclesiastes 4:9-10. Two are better than one. Yes. If either of them falls, the one will lift up his companion. Yep. That is literally ingrained in the SEAL teams. I mean, we say that all the time, just without the Ecclesiastes quote on it, right? So that kind of stuff was peppered throughout and what I started seeing is not just the fact that it's like ingrained in our culture, but it's also part of achieving. It's part of being better in general. Like just living a good, full, better life has these foundations deeply networked into them. You cannot become an elite hockey player or an elite Navy SEAL operator or any of these things without a foundation of some kind. And it has to be something that's obviously positive. It can't be like a foundation of you're crap and you're terrible. So the Christian foundational beliefs and understandings, really, I started just seeing them, how much they had bled into me and how when I strayed far from them, my life got worse. And when closer I got to them, which I was never really fully grasping them, I was just kind of like they were in the background, my life got better. So that's where I really started digging in more and seeing passages just like all things are possible through Christ and really motivating me as well. You know, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Philippians. And then, hold on, I had a couple more here. Moral foundation. There was one more. Oh, unconditional love. One of the biggest things that was keeping me away was suffering. The concept of suffering. Yeah. It was hard to reconcile. Also, when you deploy in Iraq and Afghanistan, you see very extreme religion in the Muslim religion. And I don't want to get too political and like be negative toward a certain belief system, but you see some horrific stuff in the name of their God, right? And that also made me be like, oh, religion's toxic. Religion's just so bad. And look at all the suffering. Where is God and all this, you know? And as I started digging in more, I realized that's not really the case. It's not how... It's a simplistic way to describe something and write off an entire religion in an easy packaged way. That's what atheists really do. They cherry pick and go, oh, see? So what about this? You know, can God make a boulder he can't lift? You know, it's all that kind of stuff. And it's really just silly, childish arguments.
Yeah. And one big thing for myself, I mean, I was introduced a little bit into Christianity. I fell off for a little bit, for a long time, actually. And really solidified it for me was actually a few years ago here at Skyline Church, was when Pastor Jeremy, our head pastor at the church, was like, it's not about a religion, it's about a relationship with God, right, with Jesus. And that was the first time over my 33 years of life that I ever heard that. And when he said that to me, or said that in church, that hit so hard. I was like, what? And when that word, just relationship, means so much, right? That means you got to put time into it. You got to talk to God. You got to put time aside. Because how else would a relationship work? Like, say, if you're married, for the people listening, you know, if you have a girlfriend, you have a wife, you have a spouse, you have to put time into a relationship in order for it to grow. And that's one of the reasons why I don't even like saying the word religion half the time, because it's really not.
Sure. And people forget too that the body of Christ is really like Christianity. That is the church, right?
Right.
So like,
Yeah.
religion is kind of a weird term that like we made up to
Exactly.
describe
We made it up. Yeah.
different things, like different concepts that people believe about gods and God and etc. So, yeah, to your point, that is really what it is. And for me, when I go to church, I'm there to worship. I'm there to learn more about Christ. I'm there to have fellowship with other people and help other people get closer to Christ and myself, right? So, and also I think too, a lot of people have that contractual thing, like what can Christianity do for me? Like if I become Christian, is everything just gonna be better all of a sudden?
no.
Like, no, man, you got to do work, dude.
Yeah, it's a relationship.
It's the same as anything else.
It's a relationship.
If you want to have good kids, be a good parent. Like you got to do the right things to be a good parent for them to be good. You know, if you have bad kids, it's probably partially your fault, if not all your fault, right?
Right.
And that goes for everything. If you have a bad marriage, it's probably partially your fault. You got a role to play in that, right? So you have a bad career, you got a bad, you can paint that on any aspect of your life. And yeah, so for me, when I started digging in and I started really looking at that kind of stuff, that's when I was open to the idea. I still wasn't going to church yet, but I'm doing research and I'm looking into things, and I had a Bible, and I'm kind of coming back. I'm at this point, I'm like wishing my grandma and grandpa were still alive because they were so devout and so great, and I wish I could talk to them, kind of thing, and bounce things off of them.
So you're like looking for a mentor
kind
or
of
someone to kind of guide you.
Yeah.
So now you're not looking at self anymore. You're kind of like reaching out a little bit. What year would you say this in?
So this was 2019.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah.
2020. It was around COVID time period.
Okay.
I think I hate saying that like it's a freaking
It is
like
now.
it's a calendar break.
Yeah,
like it's
everybody knows.
BC and AD. It's like before before COVID and after COVID.
Such a sad thing to say.
Yeah, it's weird.
But everybody
anyway,
knows
though,
it. Yep.
it's a good way to quantify things, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, so it was around that time period, and I was starting to explore. And I had a couple of relationships. I was trying to find, something. I knew I wanted the kids to have like a full home and full household, but dating was rough. It was so difficult. The younger guys on my platoon at the time, I had finally got back into a platoon. I got my kids in a standard schedule and had support for them to be able to deploy. So I got back in a platoon, and the guys in the platoon were like, "Oh, you need to download the apps, bro. That's how we date now. You don't go to the bar and like pick up chicks." And they're like, "You got to download the apps." So I'm like, they get me Tinder and Bumble.
Yeah, that's the apps for dating.
I guess. I had no clue. I will admit I had no idea at the time. And they wrote my bio and everything, which was like one sentence. It was so terrible. And then pick like a picture of me working out in the gym. It like wasn't even a flattering picture in any way. It was just like my muscles were showing. So I'm like, is this really what I want to be putting out there? So then I'm sitting in the platoon space at the end of one of the days, and I'm actually writing like a full-on bio and trying to put like decent pictures and stuff like that. I'm talking about my kids. I'm talking about like my nerdy side.
You're putting your personality,
my actual personality. And they're like, "What are you doing, bro? That's not what you do." And I'm like, "What do you mean it's not what you do?" And then they're watching me swipe, and I'm reading the profiles and then swiping, and they're like, "What are you doing, dude? Like, you just see if she's hot and then you swipe." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, cool, man. You're 20. That's where you're at in life. I'm a father and like trying to find like my roll dog. I'm trying to find my girl for life, so I'm not trying to waste time." And, I was like 37 at the time too. So I'm not like a spring chicken anymore. And I've got two like close to preteen kids, 100% custody. That's a hard pill to swallow for most women out there that are single, don't have any kids, or maybe do have one or something. Yeah, a lot of not great dates during that time period, like meeting some weird stuff. And, I met a girl at Starbucks in Coronado one time that was like a Twitch streamer, Twitch streamer. And then I looked her up. I think she thought like I knew who she was, and I was like, I have no clue who you are.
You're like, what's
sorry.
Twitch?
She's like 25 too, and I'm like, it's like nothing in common with this girl. And
I know I have a Twitch.
yeah, I didn't even have a Twitch. I had to sign up to look her up, and then she's like in a bra playing games, and I'm like, oh, that's why you have 1 million followers. Cool, And she was a beautiful girl, but not my speed, not where I'm at in my life, kind of thing, So that kind of stuff was happening back to back, and it was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? And then one of the last I know we kind of went down a rabbit hole. We can, but I was fed up. I had already deleted Bumble and I was getting ready to delete Tinder. And I remember I was literally like, dude, I'm just bored this weekend. I'm going to see if I can line up a date for the weekend and then I'm done. I'm just going to focus on the kids and like whatever happens, happens. I'm not going to try to date. I'm done with this. It's just like bad date after bad date. So I line up one more date and it's, this girl's like, hey, I'd love to get to know you more. Your profile looks cool. Hers did too. And I'm like, all right, cool. Where do you want to meet? And I'll come wherever you are. And she was like in East County-ish area near Urbane Cafe. So when she told me where the whereabouts she lives, I'm like, how about Urbane Cafe? Having no idea it's like her favorite place. So she's like, of course, awesome. Like I get there early because that's how it's like 15 minutes early.
Right.
Like no matter what, it's like a military thing. She's miserably late. Like it's like 20 minutes after the time we said we'd meet. And she's like texting me like, I'm so sorry. And I've already like got her meal.
You already finished 2 meals already.
I was just hungry, man. And I'm like, so I got her meal. It's like sitting there in a to-go thing already because it's been a while. But she shows up, man. And it was, to not be too corny, she's like walking across the parking lot. There's an In-N-Out for anybody who lives in San Diego. There's an In-N-Out in the same parking lot. And she's like, oh, I'm here. So I start kind of looking, and I see her walking across the parking lot. And I'm like, oh, dang. Like, she looks way better than her pictures, like, and little unbeknownst to me, she was thinking the exact same thing. She was like, oh God, he looks way better than his pictures. And I should have like dressed better. She was like, oh, this whole like, oh God, she's walking up to me like, oh man, I just like threw my hair up. But anyway, though, so we both kind of had that moment, which was cool. And then I instead of it being like that weird, how's the weather type of sit down and chat, it was like both of our whole lives were just like came out at that. And we ended up going from eating, we sat out in front of Urbane Cafe and closed it down. They were like closed and we're still sitting in one of their tables. And the lady was like, it's okay. I'll break the chairs down when you're done. And we're like, sorry, we'll move along, Went to like some local bar and didn't even get drinks, just to sit somewhere.
Yeah.
And because she had a kid, I had kids, and we weren't going to go back to one of our houses or something like that, and like I wasn't doing that stuff. So anyway, though, it was just like an amazing night. Like, wow, I really like you. This is awesome. And then I remember super corny too. After major wuss moment, but like wanted to kiss her at the end of the night, but I also didn't want to be like too presumptuous and aggressive and like scare her off, so I didn't. And then found out later once again that she's like, I really wanted you to kiss me. But anyway, though, so we eventually went on to having dates with the kids. It was like, hey, let's meet at a bowling alley and just like get the kids together. Her son was 16 at the time, and kids loved each other immediately.
That's
it was
awesome.
It was like a major blast. Like once again, that date turned into like an entire night. She was expecting her 6-year-old son to be like, when are we done, Mom? Like look at his watch and stuff. Or sorry, not his watch, his phone. But that point never came. Mm-hmm. He was like, what are we doing next? Like, what's after bowling? Are we going to get ice cream, kind of thing? And we ended up watching a movie and like, dude, just a whole night of stuff, to the point where it was like, okay, we need to get these kids to bed. Like, this night needs to be over. And then, soon after that, she was like, hey, by the way, I want at least one more kid, just so you know. Like, I know we're getting old, but like, my maternal clock is ticking and I want one more kid. And I was like, I got a vasectomy a year ago, so I can't do that. And she's like, would you be willing to get it reversed? And I'm like, I can't believe I'm saying this. Yes.
Nice.
So there was that. Yeah, she grew up in the church, very connected. She went to Sunrise her whole life, most of her life. And then she's kind of the one that was like, okay, cool. You're on this weird, like, rediscovering Christianity thing. How about you put your money where your mouth is and we go to church? And Skyline was right down the street. It was close to where we were at the time. And it was like the church I drove by a million times on the hill. And I was like, why don't we check it out? It was very intimidating to me because how big it was. But as soon as I walk in, it's like greeted immediately.
Yeah.
Felt like family right away. Worship was amazing. Pastor Jeremy was amazing. Like just everything about the church like definitely hit me hard. And I had like one of those moments. Easter was coming up in like a month and they were like, Easter baptism's coming up. And I was like, I just remember turning to her and going, we're doing that. And she's like, are we? Like, anyway, and yeah, so, and I skipped some stuff too. We had gotten married in between this time and everything. But yeah, I mean, I think we were together for like 9 months, and I proposed, and then we tried to start having the kids. I got my vasectomy reversed, and it definitely worked. But because we had twins. But anyway,
You asked for one, you got two.
yeah, man, she prayed way too hard. But the cool thing is though, is when we started going to Skyline, I was like, we're doing this, we're getting baptized, and we'd been trying to have kids, we'd been trying to get pregnant. And so we did the Easter baptisms. Both of my kids also got baptized with us. They were like, Dad, can we do that too? We'd love to. And I'm like, oh my God, it was like this big family moment. So
That's amazing.
we have pictures from it. Skyline's really good about that. So we have all of us like coming out of the water.
Yeah.
It's really cool. And so all of us did it. And then like a week later, we found out we were pregnant. So the babies were technically baptized with us. They were in her belly. Like, so we're like, it was fate. Yeah, man. And now I have 16-month-old identical twin redheaded girls.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, they're amazing.
That's awesome.
They're also
man.
crazy. And I'm 42 with brand new babies.
Nice. You look good though.
Thank you, man.
I mean, you're staying in shape.
I'm trying.
You train, you work out.
Yeah. The garage is a full gym, thankfully, so I don't have to.
Age is nothing but a mindset.
Yeah, right. Oh, no, it hits you no matter what you do.
Oh, don't tell me that. It's still up here.
No, you're right, though. I think you stay active, man. That's a big deal for sure.
I got a question for you. You were in for 20 years, right? Most of it was non-religious, atheist, right? Was there anything, any mission, any moment, any defining factor besides your wife that kind of like sparked some faith, or was like, maybe there's something, or God shined something in your path that kind of sets you on your search?
Yeah. I wouldn't say particularly from a mission.
Okay. Yeah, anything in general.
But yeah, I think looking back, one of the things that started sparking my research, I guess I skipped over this, was my kids. So I was digging into them surviving the crash. And, they were getting older, so they were asking more questions. They were like, hey, what is the story with that? My daughter's like 13 now. So she's like, she's about to turn 16, but at the time, 11, 12, something like that. More intelligent, more able to ask pointed questions about things and stuff like that. What was going on during that time period? What's up with mom? All that kind of stuff. And we're having really deep conversations, like really heavy stuff. And I start looking into, I hate throwing around the word miracle because I think it's very overused, but it was kind of a miracle, right? I mean, there's a little bit of that for sure in me that's like, holy, like it could have gone way worse. They could have been injured badly.
Yeah.
There was not a scratch on them. That car was mangled. It was for anybody out there's wondering, it was a Honda CRV. So very safe vehicle. But it rolled. It 1.5 rolls, was on it upside down, and the kids had not a scratch on them. Granted, they were in car seats. I mean, thankfully she wasn't that inept and she had strapped them in to car seats, but yeah, not a scratch on them. So there's a part of me that was looking back at that and going, wow, how is there not some kind of, there's something protecting these wonderful kids and my life somehow. I keep hitting these major ruts and I'm like screwing them up, but somehow I'm still going. And that's when I started looking into like the unending love of God. No matter what you do, no matter how sinful you are, he still is there and loves you no matter what. And I was like, that's so powerful. So that was kind of for me, the concept that hit me. And obviously social media is such a big factor. I think now that it's like, it was impossible as I'm starting to research stuff to not see like famous apologists and quick clips from like religious podcasts that were also like going into my ear. So I couldn't really
The algorithm was working for you.
The algorithm started working, man. and I try to do a really good job of keeping my algorithm as open-minded as possible. I don't like living in a bubble, but obviously that starts happening. You start researching anything and it all of a sudden Google's like, hey, did you think about this?
Right.
But so you can't really avoid it entirely, but yeah, so I couldn't really say exactly, but at some point something started getting peppered into my brain where I was like, oh yeah, oh wow, I never thought of it that way. And so I don't think there was like an aha moment. And that being said, I don't think aha moments exist, by the way. I'm a huge advocate that aha moments are nonsense. And you've actually been building that idea for years and years for the most part. And your actual aha moment is a domino effect of many things happening leading up to it. So sure, it's an aha moment, but like you're not really having an aha moment. You're just kind of putting everything that you've learned for the last several years together and going, wow, okay, this is how I could use it differently.
Yeah, it's like watching a movie, and then at the end they pay all those clips and all those little things together, and you're like, oh, that's
The montage.
Yeah,
or,
the montage. Yeah, because
I agree with you because that's kind of how it worked in my life with God. But at the same time, I think also sometimes for some people, it does have huge miracle moments because
Sure.
God does for some people, not for us, but for some people because some people need that. 'Cause God's like, that's what you need. You need this.
Well, I'm such a logical dude. I definitely had that whole like legalistic look at religion for a long time where I was like, what are the rules, and like, do I have to follow all those rules to be a Christian kind of thing? And like, I love history, so I wanted to know what was historical about the Bible, and if there was any question whether it was historical or not, I'd be like, see, nope, it's not real, and that was obviously major fault at the time, but as I know now, there's so much historical backing to so much of the Bible. It's actually insane. But and I realize how foot in mouth I've been over the years. But yeah, I think there's like there's Chuck Farrer. He's written a couple movies. He's a Navy SEAL from the 90s, but he wrote Warrior Soul, and I read it years ago. It's actually the only Navy SEAL book I've ever read. Because once I became a SEAL, I just don't read books about my own community. I just find it weird. Like, well, I read like history stuff about my community, but I don't read biographies or autobiographies about specific men. It just seems weird to me. People are always, hey, have you read blah, blah, blah's book? And I'm like, no, dude, I knew him. Like, I don't need to read his book.
Yeah.
Like, what the heck? So.
I kind of feel the same because Marines will come up to me and do the same. So-and-so, Lieutenant Colonel blah, blah, just came up. I'm like, dude.
A book on leadership, bro. Like, whatever. It's fine. Like, it's cool. Guys are making good money and doing stuff
just
and
not my
writing
cup of
books.
tea.
It's just I don't need to like read all of them. And I'm not a fan of the SEAL teams. I am one, so it's just a different thing to me. I was the same way with hockey. Never really watched it. I'm not a big fan of hockey. I play hockey.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like that with everything I get into. I don't like watching stuff. I like doing stuff. So
I'm the same way because I'm a big surfer,
oh yeah.
but I don't watch surfing.
Like, don't you know about what's his name?
Yeah,
And
I'm
you're
like, I don't know who's on the world tour. I just surf.
You're like, I don't know, man, but Tourmaline was kicking the other day, so
Just out there, the waves are head high, just out there getting it.
yeah. But anyway, though, so Warrior Soul, he has a moment in that book where I think, I want to say like an artillery round or something lands very close to him, doesn't go off, and he sees like the hand of God in it. And the whole rest of the book turns very Christian through the rest of the book. And I was atheist at the time when I read it. And I was like, oh, God, what an idiot. Like this book was so good until this moment.
But you continue to read it.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. But I wish I had looked at it in a better light. And I've revisited it since. Yeah, I see what you mean, though. Like, obviously, he needed that moment. He needed that push that was like, wow, this is huge. And whereas for me, it was much more gradual.
Yep.
It was much more, I needed to research, even though that's not necessary for my faith at all anymore. But it's something I needed to get to the point that I am now.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And because God works in mysterious ways, right? We can't say he works this way or that way or whatever. We have a finite brain, right?
Yeah.
And God has an infinite brain. So for us to try to understand him is impossible.
Well, that's even quantifying it like is crazy for me sometimes because he doesn't have a brain. Like,
Right.
Like that's like not even something we can even understand, right?
Right,
Like
and we can't even
we're
understand.
trying to put like humanistic characteristics on God.
That's even a better, like,
dude.
Like you
he's
can't
just
even
outside time and space, man.
Right,
He's not
exactly.
even
just that, right?
Yeah.
Like outside time and space.
It's
Like,
something we can't fathom.
Can't
Yeah.
even fathom it.
There's a really good quote. It's not religious at all. It's I don't even like the guy, Neil deGrasse Tyson. Not a big fan of him, but he says some decent stuff here and there and among his grifts. But sorry, any Neil deGrasse Tyson fans. But he said, macro world and micro world. We live in middle world, and macro world and micro world are like unfathomable to us, right? Like the idea that the table that our hands are on right now is mostly empty space. In micro world, to us, it's a solid, right? In middle world. And then in macro world, planets and the universe are so unbelievably vast, we can't even fathom how big macro world is living in middle world. So taking that a step further, there's no way we can fathom something that's completely outside of both of those things as well and created all of it. So,
Yeah. So don't even try.
well, there's a part of me that like always wants to, right? Like
Right,
there's that like wanderlust side of me.
Yeah.
There's that Viking in me that wants to like journey to that island and figure out what's there, and conquer it. But yeah, there's a fair amount of that I've surrendered and I'm just go lay at the feet of the Lord and allow my life to be what it's supposed to be and allow that the true purpose to set in and be the best dad I can be the best. I mean, even businessman I can be just to provide for my family and stuff like that. Which, of course, we can get into that too.
Yeah.
What I'm doing now after I retired.
Yeah, we will. That's the next segment right here, actually. We're about to slide into it.
Sweet. Like I said, I will talk forever.
You can do a Joe Rogan here and do 3 hours if you want.
One of my buddies was joking like years ago, like, hey man, you should just turn a microphone on when you're talking. People would want to listen. And I'm like, bull crap, dude. Like, and then as the years go on, I'm just seeing more and more guys get out of the military and start podcasts. And he's not wrong. Like guys are just telling stories about their lives and people want to hear it. And there's a part of me that thought it was dumb at the time. There's a saying in our community that's, silent professional, right? Like we don't advertise the nature of our work. It's literally in part of our creed. I took that to mean we don't talk about anything. We don't tell people we're SEALs. I took it to this extreme level for years and made fun of guys that wrote books and stuff like that. And I came to realize as I was getting ready to transition out of the military, what am I talking about? Like that's the dumbest thing ever. How am I gonna go look for a job after 20 years as a Navy SEAL and not put that on my resume?
Yeah.
Right? What am I going to do? Just put like military period for 20 years? Like that's not how it works.
Veteran.
Right? Yeah. Veteran, 20 years of service. And be like, can you tell me about that? And I'm like, nope. No. It's just like kind of a ridiculous concept. And then I started opening up more to the concept of like the guys that are doing, you have your like echelon front type thing, Go Willink and Leif Babin, those guys that are just like, they're killing it in the whole corporate world and translating the SEAL teams into leadership training and all that kind of stuff, which is, good for them. I used to look against that. I used to be like, oh, that's so bad. They're selling the Trident and all this stuff. And it's kind of a silly concept. It's really not the case. And at the end of the day, too, they're feeding their families. They're taking care of what they need to take care of. And they're also helping people. So they're making money while helping people at the same time. And it's not as nefarious as I used to think it was. Now, granted, if you're talking about specific operations and specific tactics and training that we're doing right now that could hinder current operations, that is what silent professional means.
Right.
I shouldn't be getting on here and talking to you about like what the next step in the SEAL teams are and where we're doing things, and which I know some of that stuff, right? I was read in and had top secret clearance like months ago. That is what silent professional means. It doesn't mean it's the loose lips sink ships is what really that saying is for.
Right.
And I think there's a fair amount of like chest beating that you shouldn't do either. You should be humble and not, be like, look at me, I'm the greatest, God's gift to the world because I'm a Navy SEAL.
Right.
That concept's silly, but to deprive everybody of your stories and experience, to deprive an entire community that could be helped by some of the things you've gone through and the wisdom you've gained over the years. Not that I'm freaking Gandalf of wisdom, but I have stories that people can relate to, people can find strength in, people can find hope in, and that's where I started going, okay, this is silly. Me not talking about it all is super silly, super dumb.
And you have a gift too. I mean, the gift of talking, right? Like you might make joke about it that
my wife wouldn't call it a gift.
But I mean, it is a gift from God, right? Like you have the ability to talk. Some people are not comfortable talking or have even the right words. I mean, myself, I trip up on words as well. But you're a good speaker in general. So
well, I appreciate it. I've gotten really good over the years. I think my faith walk has brought me back to actually speaking about things of substance. For a long time, I was really good at just gab, like nonsensical talk. I could sit and talk to you for hours about my life and not really get deep. I was really good at not getting deep.
Just surface level talking.
Always surface level. And I would act like I was real good at making it sound like I'm getting deep and not really, just kind of breezing over stuff. And I mean, I've done it in this conversation, but for the sake of brevity, that's where I've really had to kind of dig deep and look at, the last 20 years isn't just about me. It's not just about my kids. And granted, of course, I still have to make money. I still have to, I'm only 42. It's not like I can retire outright and I have 5 kids, But one of them's grown. He's 19. He still lives around the house a little bit. But yeah, so I've got to provide still. I've got 2 teenagers, 15 and 13, and then the 16-month-old twins, and I've got to provide for them. So I've got to figure out a way to monetize myself, to sell myself still, to make myself marketable to the civilian side of the world. And I was terrified to do that.
Yeah. As I talk to many of my buddies and even the veterans that come before me, I start to notice that that's a trend as well. I would like to actually get into that. That's something that we harbor in as veterans, and most, I want to say all civilians, maybe even all veterans, we don't really talk about that transition period and how actually terrifying, depressing, and empty that is. Can you relate? And or if yours wasn't, then
That's awesome. But I know mine
100%
wasn't.
was.
so yeah, if you could elaborate more on that.
And here's where I come back to Christianity by this time. So as I'm like a year out from retiring and that whole thing is starting, I'm going through the steps. I'm doing preliminary paperwork and stuff like
It's
that.
becoming real.
I'm looking at like the TAP course that you have to do. Of course, I don't do the real full TAP course. I do the really quick online one that's like I can click through really fast, because even though there was really good stuff in those that I breezed over that I shouldn't have, but the dread started to rise. It was immense, man, to the point where I didn't realize how bad it was. And I had the mentality of like, I'm good to go. I'm fine. I'm a Navy SEAL. What am I complaining about? And, you know, almost everybody in my life makes that joke all the time. If I even pretend like I'm cold, somebody will come out of the woodwork in my family and be like, what are you acting like you're cold for? You're a Navy SEAL. You never get cold. And I'm like, shut up, man. Like, just because I can handle misery doesn't mean I want to always be miserable. You know, so
yeah, that speaks volumes right there. And
yeah, I definitely started to really like revert back to that whole, I got this, I'm fine, even though I wasn't. And thankfully, though, I was still going regularly to church, and I just started serving on the security team, or sorry, the safety team. There's some people that don't like the word security team because it sounds so aggressive, but the safety team at the church, and I was getting filled up with the word still. So that kept my heart just soft enough to look at other stuff and kind of reach out for mentors in this situation. So one of the things that I found in looking for that was the Honor Foundation. And I want to give them a huge shout out. I have no skin in the game as far as like helping them or anything like that. But if anybody wants to donate to a cause, the Honor Foundation is fantastic. It's a transition course. Musselman founded. He was in the Navy for a little period of time. I don't want to totally ruin his story, but he was in the Navy for a little period of time. He tried to be a SEAL. I think got injured and or didn't make it for some reason. And then when he was, I think, working in like the snack shack or something like that, getting ready to transfer out to the regular Navy, he was talking to master chiefs and stuff and guys that were getting out that had no plan. And he was just like, what in the world? How are these high operating men getting out so lost?
Right.
And I think he had already run a Fortune 500 company before he joined the Navy at this point. Like he was already a very successful businessman before he joined.
Business opportunity right
so
there.
he was like, you got to be kidding me. And he mentored this guy. He mentored one guy. He didn't name the name of who it was, but he mentored this one dude, helped him write his resume, helped him get a really good job when he got out. And he was like, man, I can do this. Like I could help a lot of people doing this. So he started, the Honor Foundation started really small. It was only for Navy SEALs at first and guys that were getting out. And now it's open to all branches.
That's amazing.
And even like tech support guys. So you don't have to be like special forces either. It's anybody that's part of the SOF community, the SOCOM community. And it's amazing, man. They have multiple campuses now. Started in San Diego, but now it's huge. And so the Honor Foundation, I brought home a thing on it, and my wife was like, you're doing it. I was like thinking of doing it, and she's like, you're doing it.
That's awesome.
And I actually skipped a semester that I could have joined, and I didn't do it. And I kind of put it off, and it came and went. And she's like, how come you didn't start Honor Foundation? I was like, oh, whoopsie. It already started. I missed the intro time. I'm like, whoops. And she's like, okay, when's the next one, idiot, you know? And thankfully she kind of whipped me out of that funk because I was just, I was at Trade again, like for my last year in the community. So it was Over the Beach cell, which is pretty simple. Like there's not big trips in that training cycle. So you do it mostly in Coronado and a couple other training sites. So it's all local. So I'm home every day. I'm not going anywhere crazy. And I got really lazy and lax. And it was just like, oh, my 20 years is almost up. I'm like done. You know, I'm not doing it. I'm not really particularly motivated anymore. And I'm just like ready to be out.
You're dropping the pack already.
Yeah, but I have no plan. So I'm like the fear is rising in me.
Yeah.
And just the what am I going to do when I get out is rising in me. But if you would have talked to me at that time period, I would have sounded like I had everything together. I would have bull crapped you and been like, yo, yeah, man, I got all kinds of stuff in the works. And just, it was complete nonsense. I had nothing in the works. So my wife, she would literally say she carried me there kicking and screaming, but it's almost literal because I was a jerk the whole drive. While she was driving me to the facility, I was like a total jerk the whole drive. I was like just being mean, like everything sucked. I was like talking crap about everybody on the road. I was like trying to find excuses to not go. She had to buy me some like nice clothing too, like because you're supposed to be in like a kind of a suit and stuff, but I didn't really have anything. But yeah, so hooked me up with that, made me go and was like, here's your lunchbox, honey. Have a good day at school. You like made me do it. And
your wife sounds like the backbone.
Yeah, she's awesome.
That's awesome.
But I went in this first class and she actually went in there with me. She didn't just kick me out of the car. She went in there too. It's like the first one's for spouses too, to find out what it's all about. And it was amazing. Right off the bat, it was like super welcoming. Hey, here's your community. Here's a bunch of dudes. Here's like 50 guys going through this with you that are also confused, that are also feeling the same way you're feeling.
That's awesome.
That are just like, what do I do with my life? How do I translate what I just did for the last 20 years to Joe Schmo civilian who has no idea? Or worse, I think, is like, ooh, Navy SEALs, you guys are amazing. And overly, like, without actually knowing your capabilities, overly hires you for something you shouldn't even be doing. You know, like that's happening a lot too, guys. There's like that myth out there, right, of the SEAL teams, and guys are getting hired in positions they have no business being in and failing, and rightfully so. They have no experience in that field, right? Their business acumen isn't there yet. Anyway, so this program is like 3 months and it just crushed all of that for me. It was like all of my fears went away. I got into like what makes me tick, what's my why. Like,
that's awesome.
We dug into like, why did I even become a SEAL? Like why do I do what I do on a daily basis? Why am I even part of this? Any community that I am in, why am I doing those things? What makes me tick? What makes me motivated to wake up the next day kind of stuff? And what do I want to be doing? And I came up with this slogan throughout the whole thing where it was like, hey man, I destroyed for 20 years because I was a breacher. Anybody that doesn't know what that is expert in entry. So there's a locked door, locked gate, wall you can't get through. You call for a breacher. You call breacher up, you put your fist on your head, breacher comes up, and you assess the situation, and you either go explosive or mechanical or manual. Manual would be like your sledgehammers, your hoolies and crowbars, stuff like that. Mechanical would be like quickie saws, torches, and chainsaws. And then explosive is pretty self-explanatory. You go boom, and you break open the door. You knock down the wall. You make a hole in the wall. Whatever you need to do to execute the mission, right? And clear the obstruction that the platoon's trying to get through. So I destroyed stuff literally for most of my career and trained to blow stuff up. And so I was like, my slogan throughout Honor Foundation was like, hey, I've destroyed for 20 years. Now I'm going to build.
That's awesome.
And I didn't mean it literally, though. But now I own a construction company, so I'm literally building.
Now you're literally building.
Literally building. But it's really cool because I get the same level of problem solving on a day-to-day basis. Every job is so vastly different. I get to help people out and like build their dream home or help renovate their dream home or whatever that may be. We're starting to get into government contracts too, so we're going to be doing some larger stuff as well.
That's awesome.
But it's been amazing, man. So Trident Contracting for, so I can pitch my business. But yeah, my business partner is amazing. He's the actual GC. He's the brains of the operation as far as the construction side goes. He's amazing. I'm doing operations, business development, stuff like that. And I'm also adding marketing right now, which has been a lot of learning. But
yeah, you don't seem like a marketing kind of guy.
Yeah, it's been
at least the tech side.
Big learning curve for sure. But I've learned a ton. Learned to use AI, learned to use a lot of this editing software and stuff like that. But I am running all of our social media and our website.
That's awesome.
It's not terrible, but it could be way better. But yeah, man, so that's kind of where I'm at now. But the two things that really got me through that were the Honor Foundation and my Christ Walk. So still having the fellowship at Skyline, having my mentors in men's ministry and kind of helping me guide me through the dark parts. Right. And help me kind of come out of that funk of like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to, and actually even being able to express that to anybody.
Right.
Which the first people I was able to do that with were my fellowship at church, my Bible study, you know, my thin line ministry Bible study, which is first responders and military. And yeah, it was the amount of support that I got and the amount of, I mean, that's just through the board, like through the roof when it comes to the Christian community in general. Like, and like I said before, I want to, you know, I could give a shout out to the SEAL teams Christian community too. We have a feed on Signal, Operator Christians, and it's like every Christian Navy SEAL on the West Coast. And it's amazing because there's guys in there that are pastors now, and they're putting out scripture, they're putting out struggles that they've gone through and how they worked through them and stuff.
That's amazing.
Biblically, how they're doing it with fatherhood and all that. You know, it's a really great little network there. So combined with all that stuff, I was able to really get my resume knocked out, get my goals put together. And then I started just having cups of coffee with like every single person from every single industry I could think of, business owners, entrepreneurs, just went nuts with it. And the Honor Foundation put forth like this concept of cups of coffee. Like you should have cups of coffee with everybody. And it's not literally a cup of coffee. Like it could be a cup of coffee, but it's just sitting down with somebody, talking to them, and
the concept.
Networking, right? And I just leaned in hard, as I do. And
I didn't notice.
oh man, I went nuts. It was like they wanted you to have like 50 or something by the end of the course, and I think like half the guys didn't even get close to 50, and I was at like in the hundreds for sure.
New record.
I had the ability to do it at the job I was in at the time too. So some guys were crazy busy still, so they didn't have the bandwidth. But yeah, I leaned in really hard, met a ton of great people, made a ton of really good contacts, and started like leaning into the construction world, and got in talks with McCarthy, the huge general contractor. It's a massive general contractor. They do skyscrapers and stuff like that. They're really pro-military. With the Honor Foundation, we did a tour of their one of their facilities in Arizona with the Honor Foundation. So they put on this whole gala for us and stuff. Or not gala, but they put on an event for us. And I was really enticed by it. So I started leaning into that, started talking to their business development department and their hiring managers and all that kind of stuff. I went like straight to like the vice president of the company and like introduced myself, and you know, I have no fear with that kind of stuff. So started getting in talks with them. And then one of my buddies at church was like, hey man, he overheard me talking about this. I was like, hey man, we need to sit down and talk. And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. So we have a little chat about his company. And he had owned a general contracting company, you know, construction company for the last 6 years. And I was like, that's really cool, man. And I was like picking his brain, and I had known him kind of from church, but not really closely. We weren't good friends or anything, but acquaintances, and was on the safety team as well with me at church. And then funny enough, like a week later, our kids have this camp out, and it's at a public campground. So they were calling for safety team guys to come and stay overnight, stay awake. So while the kids are, you know, in the tents, and make sure they're protected and there's nobody weird walking through the campground. The only two people that volunteer are he and I. So the whole first night, it's like straight 24-hour shift of just us like trying not to fall asleep and drinking tons of coffee around a fire. But it turned into like 12-hour interview throughout the night. He's just chatting me up and asking me about all these different things, what I want to do, what I don't want to do, how much money I want to make, kind of thing, and you know, my family and life and all that kind of stuff. And unbeknownst to me, he's basically like, I want to make this guy a business partner.
Yeah.
So fast forward a month, man, I'm like signing shares, and I'm a partial owner of the company now, and COO, and just crushing it. And I love it. I mean, it's amazing, man. I have the ability, I'm making P&L decisions for the company, and, and I'm able to expand us. And he already had such a great model, right? I kind of won the lottery here. Already had a great model. He already has amazing business ethics. He already has a great reputation. And I just coming in and creating SOPs. I'm not creating the culture. I'm just quantifying it on paper. The culture already exists, and it's already fantastic. So I didn't have to create anything. I'm just like quantifying it, putting it on paper and going, hey, this is what Trident Contracting stands for. And it's all fantastic already. So all I've really done is gone, okay, he's reputation only. He's word of mouth only. I've just gone to the next level of, hey, now we have a social media presence. Now we have a LinkedIn. Now we have a website, and we're getting business that way. And I'm tapping into my networks and going, hey, hey, everybody, I do construction now. Do you need any work done? You know, and
using your reputation and your skills and just expanding that.
And now we have way too much work. I mean, it's like we can hardly handle, which is a good problem to have, obviously. Now we're looking to hire and we're slowly scaling and expanding, but it's been an amazing ride so far, man. And I'm only January was when I retired, so it's very new still.
Wow!
But we're on course right now to make in Q1 the amount that we made all year last year.
Wow, that's amazing.
Not only my contributions, obviously the whole team is killing it, and Govan, my partner, is amazing as well. But yeah, I've been a value add, I hope.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. God really works in mysterious ways.
Oh yeah. I mean, pretty pointedly sometimes. Sometimes it's not mysterious. I think sometimes we can see it pretty clearly.
Right.
For sure.
Right. So being in the CEOs, right? And honestly, not just the CEOs, but your entire life, you're kind of a high risk, high reward kind of a person that I've noticed. And honestly, I'm kind of the same way. And being in the Marine Corps, and same with you being in the CEOs, we did those high risk things. And even with your career right now as a contractor, is that your position? Contractor? And do you find yourself finding or getting that itch and doing it still? Like for me, for example, I'm a big advocate for mental stimuli. Like I like to push the mental limits very, very far. And I find myself looking for extreme sports, such as like 25K Tough Mudders or Spartan races. Sometimes I do 2 of them at once, and I'll come back and do another 10K or do 3 hikes in one day, something astronomical, which normal people would think is astronomical.
Sure.
And that's how I kind of get my kind of itch. Is that something you do as well? Is that kind of how you push your business model as well, or get that itch?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that, I'm trying to phrase this not vulgarly. I'm a firm believer that every man, well, not just man, women too, should get I'm just trying to find a gender neutral way to say this, but a swift kick in the nuts at least a couple times.
Yes.
A year. And I'm not talking like where you injure yourself drastically or something like that. Not something that's just like totally insane, but something that, so there's mental and physical fatigue, right? Mm-hmm. Most people have no idea what their actual physical fatigue level is because their mental fatigue kicks in well before their physical, right? Yeah. Your body's actually capable of way more than you let yourself believe. So most people quit or say, I can't do this before they really reach that full potential, which I think is sad. I think everybody should know what that is. I've been lucky enough and blessed enough to know exactly what that is for myself. In SEAL training, you are forced to find that, what that is, right? And you encounter it multiple times throughout your career. So I've been blessed to know exactly where those limits lie in myself. And one of the things about being a parent is I'd love to translate that to my kids as well. Like not have them limit themselves mentally, not just physically though, but also with their careers, also with their academics, with everything, right? Like your mind limiting you is so powerful. Mm-hmm. And I think somebody recently was just talking about, I don't know where I saw this, but it was like they did this experiment where they put fake scars on people's faces and they sent them into interviews. And they were like, they had a control group that had nothing on their faces. And they were like, hey, when you come out of this interview, I want you to tell us how much you thought you were discriminated against. And obviously the control group, it was like very low. Like very few people thought they were discriminated against. It was just like, low percentages of people reporting it. And then then they put fake scars on another group. And they were like, hey, we want you to go in there. You have these fake scars. They showed them having the scars put on. So they looked grotesque. Mm-hmm. And then right before they went in, they're like, hey, hold on, we need to touch up the scars. And they removed them. But they didn't tell them that they removed them. So when they went into these interviews, they did not have scars.
It was all in their head.
But when they came out, I think I'm going to totally misquote this. So, people can hammer me in the comments if they want. But it was something like 180 times, like 180% higher reports of discrimination. They were like, oh, man, they saw discrimination in every single thing the person said. Like every time there was a question, they were like, oh, they're looking at my scars. But there were no scars.
Right.
My point in bringing this up is our minds are so powerful. Yeah. If you go into something with a preconception or a misconception or just any kind of bias at all, you're going to see that in everything. You're going to be putting that coat of paint on the situation. Mm-hmm. And that's where I like in my religious journeys when I was really in like Jeet Kune Do for a while, which is Bruce Lee's martial art that he kind of founded, I guess. It's not really a martial art, it's mostly a mindset, but he's like, empty your cup, and that's where that mentality of like when you are speaking to a mentor or learning something new, Just empty your mind and learn from them. Doesn't matter what you know. It doesn't matter if you know more than they do.
Mm-hmm.
There's something to be learned from everybody, right? It doesn't matter if their IQ is way less than yours. It's like Einstein was like, I treat the dean of the school the same way I treat the janitor. It's that same concept. Like everybody's got something to contribute, right? So like, I think it is kind of sad actually that people want to listen to me more than the average person that has the same stories I do. Only because I was a Navy SEAL. That is kind of a weird thing in our society where it's like somehow I'm more important.
Because you have some accolades or some...
Sure. A highly thought of accolade, right? Now, granted, achievement is something to look up to. I agree there. It's cool. Like difficult things. That's why we love the Olympics. We love watching the best of humanity. We love watching people do amazing things that we never could dream of doing. So in saying all that, I think it's extremely important to remind ourselves of that mindset. And the only way to do that really is to push your limits. The only way to do that is to intellectually and physically challenge yourself from time to time. So I constantly am trying to learn about a subject I have no idea about, which is what recently got me into artificial intelligence and machine learning, which machine learning is more accurate of a term, but I was super ignorant to it and was like, oh, it's evil, it's bad, it's going to take over the world. And like, it's totally not the case, but
we have conversations about that all the time.
it's just so, it's out of ignorance though. Right. So I challenged myself and I was like, dude, I'm going to get on ChatGPT. I'm going to start learning what this does. I'm going to start learning prompts. I'm going to start looking into the news, following a few key players in that world and see how wrong I am. Right. And then physically, yeah, I'm a huge advocate. I think and I am going to be a little sexist here, every dude on this planet should be doing a physically difficult thing to himself every couple months, like putting himself through a rigorous training program or hike or something that is insanely physically challenging to the point where you know at some point you're going to want to quit, but you don't, right?
Right.
You know you're going to hit that wall. Throw yourself into a race, and train for it. Don't be stupid, but do something where you're pretty sure partway through it, you're going to go, this sucks. I don't want to do this. And then make yourself do it. Right.
Yep.
I think that's so valuable. I think there's so much value in that. It's how you build grit. It's the only way to do it. There's no magic potion. There's no book you can read. So I think it's not just the fact that I think that's a way to like temper myself. I think it is the way to temper anybody. So yeah. And I would say it's backed up by a ton of data that I couldn't quote right now, but yeah, and it's the proof is in the pudding, man. I mean, I've seen so many high operating people do the same things themselves. I'm not saying you need to crush yourself. There's obviously a balance there. And I don't advocate getting up, just sleeping like 3 hours and being all like, I don't know, that culture's kind of weird of like these big business execs that are like, oh, I barely sleep and I'm just work all the time.
That's crazy.
Like, there's a balance there.
Right.
Where is the juice worth the squeeze kind of thing? Like, wow, what kind of life do you actually have at that point, But it's got to be a tenable thing, I think, too. So that's why I'm saying you kick yourself in the nuts every so often.
Right.
It's not you don't need to do it all the time.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm a huge advocate. I'm a huge advocate of coming of age for your kids, dude. I think we have a huge lack of that in our society. And by that, I mean like a legitimate like coming of age event for your kids, like an actual challenging thing that you put them through. Not like, I'm not talking like the Spartan Ogogi where you like throw them to the wolves, but
something
similar, right?
Significant where even to them, it changes their mind, right?
Correct. And at the end of it, you accept them as a member of the adult male community and the adult female community. I think every mother should be doing that with their daughters and every father should be doing that with their sons. And I think it's hugely impactful. And it's something I got through the SEAL teams once again, but wouldn't have got any other way. And I see the value in it. I'm not saying everybody has to go through Hell Week and destroy their body. I still have nerve damage to this day from that. That's a little extreme, but there are ways to simulate those same kind of, feelings of achievement and feelings of, I just went through something that was a struggle and I accomplished it. And also my mentor and or father, whoever it is in your life, told me good job.
Right.
There's that's a massive positive thing, I think, for every young man and young woman. So,
and that's also translatable to other aspects as well. It doesn't even have to be just physical, right? Like you can translate that I think I can do it, or I've done it, to business, to a hard time in relationship, or say you lost a loved one or something like that. Like I got over this hump in this physical world or this task that I was driven before, that muscle, that I called it a muscle,
Yeah.
That muscle that you've trained before got stronger. So now you can do it this time
Yep.
for this next thing, because it's a translatable muscle in your head that is moving forward or getting stronger.
Yeah. I want to say this was told to me during my time when I was taught, like learning about addiction, learning about what my ex-wife had gone through and what she still struggles with. And I'm pretty sure it was one of the therapists we were talking to at the time, but they were like, your brain is kind of like a mountain with snow on it. And if you go down that same path over and over and over again on a snowboard, you create a big indent in
Like
the
a
snow.
rut almost. Yeah.
And it becomes so deep at a certain point that you can't turn out of it.
That's an awesome
you will
analogy.
continue to go down that path over and over again. Is creating a habit, right? Or creating an addiction and all that kind of stuff. You're creating a pathway in your brain that is going to go to that. That's why, like, when you cope with something negative, that's why you keep going back to it. It's part of the reason why you keep going back to it. And same thing goes for good habits, right? So if you create that schedule, that discipline, which this is where I know I mentioned Jocko earlier. I 100% agree with his discipline equals freedom concept, because it just does, man. Like, the idea that having a schedule, I know it sounds restraining to some people. They're like, oh man, I want to be chained down by the schedule I'm on and this workout regimen and this eating regimen and all these other things. Like, I feel like I'm in shackles. And I'm like, to counter that, I would say you're shackled by your unhealthy environment, your bad diet that you're on, your health issues that you're having because you aren't healthy, or whatever it is, other challenges in your life that you're facing and not actually handling because you're not mentally and physically fit to handle them. You're in chains because of those things. And if you had a disciplined lifestyle and you kind of implement some of these concepts, you can achieve so much more than you think.
Right.
And then in addition to that, you add Christ into that too. And you add the idea that we're all children of light, right? We all have the ability to be like beacons and do great things in the world. It frustrates me when I meet people that are like nihilistic and just everything sucks and nothing matters. And I'm like, man, have you not looked out the window?
Right.
Like, have you not seen an airplane flying recently? Like, there's so amazing things in the world that we've achieved and done, and beautiful things we've done.
Common grace, right?
It's just, there's amazing things that humankind has done and humankind continues to do. Granted, are there terrible things too? Sure, there are. There's never not gonna be. We all fall short. We all sin. But to disregard all the good just because there's bad is just, I don't know, you're selling yourself short, man. You're crushing your own life.
Yeah.
And along with that goes, creating a good schedule for yourself, doing the Spartan race stuff. That stuff's fun, man.
Yeah, it's
and even when you get too old to do that, there's still ways to challenge yourself in those same ways, right? Like, there's still easier hikes you can go on, or like, there's dudes that have done like 80-year-old men that have like rowed across like massive oceans and stuff, like done crazy stuff, like still at that age. So if you keep moving, you can keep doing.
Just keep going.
It's just, if you give up,
right,
that's when that goes away.
Working that give up muscle. That's what I call it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that insight, those tips, really, because those are just tips. So 20 years, now you have a business with your business partner. That's a new evolution in your life. Do you have I don't want to say 10-year goal because I don't like saying that. What do you see in the future for you now that you're, I don't want to say free, but that you're in the civ div?
Yeah, I have tons of goals, man. I obviously, one big thing in the SEAL teams that I absolutely transfer to almost everything else I do in my life is the idea of mission planning and contingency management. That's something I think everybody should kind of do, and you don't need a military framework to do it. Obviously, there are people that are good at it that never were in the military. Looking at like, hey, here, what's my 1-year goal, 2-year goal, 5-year goal, 10-year goal? How am I going to achieve those? What are my possible obstacles that I'm going to run into along that way, and how can I mitigate them and or avoid them completely? I'm doing that all the time. So I have a ton of goals. One of them, what I really like to do is, as I build more and as I see my company, helping people and changing their lives, and I want to start a nonprofit at some point. Where I'm building homes for Gold Star families, disabled veterans, and just granted I want to start there, but I kind of want to do the same thing the Honor Foundation did and open it up and continue to expand from there and help others as well. But I'd really like to give back to my community, and there's also opportunities with the Honor Foundation to go back and coach and help do the same thing that was done for me. At some point, I'd love to go do that. So those are some of my give back goals. And then for the business, I massive plan written out, very detailed for the next 10 years. That's like massive aggressive expansion in certain points, but in a way that's scalable, that makes sense. So that's obviously a huge goal. I don't want to be in 10 years, if we're making the same amount of money we're making right now and we're servicing the same area with the same number of employees, I've failed in my job. Right. So I'm not looking to like do a takeover or something like that, but I want to provide more for my employees. I want my employees to have opportunities within our company to move up and make more money as well. I want to mentor guys within our community and our company to be leaders in the company as well, not just be like a 25-year-old laborer still when he's 40, and
you want to build people up.
Exactly. So create training programs within our company that's doing that as well. And then as far as fatherhood and my faith walk and my family, I want to continue to create an amazing foundation with my wife. We're super involved in marriage ministry at Skyline. So we're, in addition to working on our own marriage, we're trying to pour into others. And then with my kids, it's right now I'm fielding a college level student, a sophomore about to be a junior in high school, and then a middle schooler that's about to be a high schooler, and then infants. So I've got every phase of childhood under me right now as a father, which is definitely daunting. And I'm not saying I'm perfect at all of it, but that's another huge goal of mine, is just to continue to refine how I'm dealing with that, how I'm mentoring them, how I'm setting examples for them and developing them for their future. So they don't have that same moment that I had before I did the Honor Foundation, where I was in this deep, dark place of what am I going to do with my life? I want to give them the tools so they never reach that. They never, or if they inevitably do reach that dark moment, because we all do, we all hit those walls. They have the tools to get out, right? They have that example and go, oh, what did Dad do? Oh yeah, that's right. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. And I can open my Bible and get some, get the word in me and get that inspiration that I need, and remember that no matter what, even when I feel like I'm alone, I'm not actually alone. So those are some of my many goals.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. Those are some pretty big goals, but also achievable with the skills that you have and the accolades that you have. And it sounds like with those goals, you also found purpose in what you have now. Because I know even for myself and a lot of military members, if veterans are listening, or active duty, or anyone, it's very hard. While we're given purpose.
Yep.
But during that transition,
in.
It's baked into our everything, whether you're a, admin person or mechanic or infantry, whatever it is, we're given a mission set and given purpose. But as soon as you get 1 year from getting out, 3 months from getting out, whatever it is, that transition period, we lose a sense of purpose.
For sure.
And that's what you talked about earlier, that dark place we get into. But yeah, I'm glad you found your sense of purpose now. And it took me a while to find mine. And I hope that anyone listening, that they will be able to find yours. And it really helps when you have a good sense of community. It helps a lot. And
because you lose a community in some ways, right? Like you automatically, and I will say the wheel continues to turn. The military machine continues to grind. You are not Rambo. And you are not the linchpin that made the entire military function. When you leave, it's just fine without you.
Right.
And that's a hard pill to swallow for some people.
That's where I was getting at.
And if you can let go of your ego and just realize that that's okay, it's totally fine. And then I would also, if I could impart any wisdom to anybody else out there that's struggling in this time period, like they're already out and they're in the darkness right now, get connected, man. Yeah. Like there are veteran communities out there. I guarantee whatever community you are a part of has reunions and has gatherings, and there's like veteran beer clubs and stuff like that. If you still want to go out drinking with the guys and stuff like that, that's not my highest recommendation, but I would say there's just really good ways to stay connected to the community, and also find a community that's not even military.
Correct.
Find your new tribe, right? Find your new people. And for me, that's multiple things. It's not just one place where I have that, right? I have multiple ministries that I'm involved in at church. So I have several different groups of friends there. I've got my business community where I have several friends there. I've got my nerd community, which we haven't even touched into, which maybe we won't. I don't know. But anyway, though, so I have, and then my family as well. I've got tons of extended family on both sides that are it's vast, right? Yeah. And if you allow those people to be in your life and you reach out to them and and you take care in those relationships, they will bring you back and revive you. And then within all that, keeping Christ at the forefront, it's a recipe for success.
Yeah, Christ for myself was a huge, huge eye opener. If you don't have Christ, there's other ways. Like it is a dark time. It can be a lonely time, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
There's many outlets. There's other brotherhoods, quote unquote, out there,
and sisterhoods.
And sisterhoods. There's other families out there besides the military.
Yes.
I know that some of you guys may have, some of us, even myself, we thought that this was it.
Yeah.
And it felt like you would never see your brothers again.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And that feeling is very empty feeling and very lonely, but it doesn't have to be. You can get out of that mindset.
The biggest one is I don't matter anymore.
Yeah. You're just a number.
I no longer matter.
Yeah.
I'm not helping anymore. That feeling of what brought me into the military.
Yep.
That feeling of I was missing out on contributing. Now I'm choosing to not contribute anymore, right? By getting out and or retiring.
Mm-hmm.
You're giving up. Whereas like everybody in my community says when you're getting ready to retire, like, oh, you're quitting. But it's a joke, but it definitely can give that feeling of despair. Like you don't matter anymore. What is my purpose? Why am I even doing what I'm doing? And unfortunately, we have too many veterans getting out and turning to really bad coping, like drugs and alcohol, and unfortunately committing suicide and stuff like that. That's just it's insane. It's racked my community pretty bad in the last decade. For obvious reasons. We've been at war for a long time, and that's just kind of for sure the fallout from that time period. But it's a shame to see because there's so many good outlets out there. There's so many ways to get help and find community. But yeah.
And even for the ones that aren't military members or service members, for the civilians listening out there, I'd like to say, like, just take that into account, that these are the thoughts that are going through very stubborn, burly men and women who don't want to talk about this kind of stuff. But these are going through our heads.
Yeah, you're not the only one, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the big thing. That's the big thing I needed to see, right? I was not the only one. I'm throwing a little pity party for myself, and it's just silly. All humans are going through struggles all the time, and God, the other thing I totally breezed over was I'm getting ready to launch a podcast. So we haven't done anything yet. We're in the middle of building a studio and like messing up and
what is your podcast called?
The Frog and the Hog podcast.
And the Hog.
So I have a co-host. It's the two of us. He is a former SWAT operator and now a pastor. And then so he's the Hog. For those listening out there that don't know, the nickname for the SEAL teams is Frogman. So that's where the frog comes from. So yeah, we'll be doing. It's going to be a faith-based podcast. We're going to bring on military and first responder guests and talk about their faith walk and stuff like that. Get into hard topics about manhood, fatherhood, masculinity, and how it all translates to a biblical walk. And then see where it goes from there. I mean, we're starting out with the manly aspect and military and first responder aspect, but I'd like it to open up and see where the Lord takes us. Yeah, we have not launched yet, but I didn't want to forget to pitch that because we're going to be probably launching an episode in the next month or two.
We're definitely going to check in for that, right?
Yeah, cool.
We definitely will.
And if I could be so presumptuous, I'd love to have you on.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But yeah,
for sure, definitely.
Put you in the hot seat, man.
Yeah,
payback.
For sure.
So we've covered your journey as a SEAL, some bit of your transitions, and then also some of your present day life. So curious, and I'm sure some of the listeners out there are curious too, what does a normal day for a SEAL look like? Not just what we see on the TV or what we hear on social media or whatever. What do you guys do on a normal day-to-day basis when you guys kick your boots up? Do you guys, what do you guys do?
Yeah.
From what you want to tell.
It varies greatly.
Okay.
It varies greatly for sure. There are, I want to try to avoid stereotyping the community, but there are some definite commonalities and there are definite things that are kind of across the board as far as our culture. Obviously, once you get through SEAL training, it's like you integrate into the culture of being a SEAL, and there's some crossover. But we have guys that grew up in trailer parks and guys that grew up Fortune 500 company kids, with trust funds and stuff like that, and everything in between. So it really does take all kinds. Like there's no specific community or specific bracket of people or whatever that SEALs come from. So I would say in that respect, we're much like a reflection of society. Now, obviously, the big thing is the achievement piece, right? Like what makes a SEAL want to do insanely difficult crap on a regular basis. And like to quantify what we do, as simple as saying, if there's a road to walk down to get to a target and there's a swamp right next to it, everyone else would take the road. SEAL teams are going to take the swamp. Right? That's like the easiest way to explain like what we do on a regular basis. We look for the crappiest, hardest way to do something and try to figure out how to tackle it and then do it because nobody would expect it, right? So, and that's how we built our reputation. And obviously, there's a lot more to it than that, but that's a basic way to explain it. So, what makes somebody choose that lifestyle of doing the worst possible thing to themselves and their bodies and on a regular basis? And that's the question, man. I mean, I think so. Like a day-to-day thing for most of us is, I think almost every SEAL has a propensity to challenge themselves every day. Like I think that's something that most team guys I know, with the exception of some, a small percentage of the community that's like totally burnt out, because that definitely happens, right? That life fatigue where they're just like, screw this, and I'm going to be like fat for the rest of my life. There's definitely guys that get out of the SEAL teams and just let themselves completely go and have no discipline at all. And I get that to some degree. It's a shame to see. But I definitely see that burnout where they're like, screw everything. This life has been really hard. I'm not doing anything hard ever again. But that's kind of rare. When I look at like a lot of the motivational stuff, a lot of the leadership training, and like, here's what you should do with your day and be super efficient. That's kind of the same thing. I mean, there's a lot of that in our community. There's a lot of like, hey, what can I do to be productive? Like if you're not asking yourself, where can I be productive right now? You're kind of wrong in our community, right? Like when we're on patrol, for example, you should be thinking, where, if I was in a firefight right now, where's the nearest cover? Where's the nearest concealment? Where could I create a fighting position? Where could I best support my buddy and my platoon and my fire team? If you're not asking yourself that, what are you doing? Right? Like you daydreaming? You're like, come on, so there's always something you could be doing actively, even when stuff is boring. And that mindset is, I think, across the board, with the exception of a few individuals, that's like 99% of the community. So that's definitely like on our minds all the time. But aside from that, dude, we have barbecues and just live life like normal people.
Just normal people.
Yeah, man, we're human beings that just decided to do hard stuff.
Right.
I mean, I know I'm oversimplifying it a little bit, but over the years met some people from other physically high achieving communities, like, professional hockey players, Olympians and stuff like that. I mean, shoot, a couple of them are in the SEAL teams. There's guys that were Olympians that became SEALs and stuff like that. It's like they're regular people. They just decided to go crazy with this one thing, or just decided to push the envelope to its absolute, utmost degree. And yeah, there's something a little bit off about us, I think, too. Like you have to have a little bit off about you. Like you have to a certain extent, kind of be like, it's okay if I get totally messed up right now.
Right.
Like you have to have that mentality. Like you can't have too much fear. I think we all have fear, obviously, right? Like where bravery isn't the absence of fear. It's like knowing that it's being fearful, but doing it anyway, right? So I think you have to be able to conquer that. You have to have a certain level of bravery. But yeah, aside from that, man, I feel like I said, I keep referencing my nerd side. I'm a huge Dungeons and Dragons.
I was just about to get into that.
Huge Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
Well, not specifically Dungeons and Dragons. I just say that because almost nobody knows the other tabletop games that there are out there, which I'm making myself sound even more nerdy.
Let's get into that. How
D&D is the like big, household name that everybody knows because there's movies about it and stuff like that. So I just say that. It's like when people ask me where I'm from, I just say LA, even though I'm not from LA.
Right, you're from
I just say LA because nobody knows all the sub-cities around the area. So, yeah, when you like San Fernando Valley and Santa Clarita, all these other places, they're like, what? Or the same with San Diego. You don't say El Cajon or, you say San Diego. Yeah. So
San Carlos or La Mesa. You don't.
Anybody outside San Diego, they're like, "What is that?"
Right.
So, and then you just go San Diego.
So anyway, you get into like Warhammer and all those.
No, I don't do tabletop war games. Although I do find them cool. And I have friends that do that stuff. But I'm not into those as much because I am hugely into the storyline. I like character development. I love Like if you offer me a book to read and it's a very, very like meat and potatoes story driven and it has no character development, I'm probably not going to like it. Like I want to know what's going on in the characters' heads. I want to know the evolution of the character and where they end up. And, I want a deep seated emotional connection in the story, in my movies too, any media that I consume. So that's what I love about it, because you sit down at a table with people and you create stories. You make up stories.
Yeah.
And then you have a small set of rules that kind of turns it into a game, I guess. So there's some parameters to make it make sense. But aside from that, you kind of it's collaborative storytelling is really what it is. And for me, it was straight up PTSD treatment, like unbeknownst to me. But I had some friends that were attached to my platoon. They weren't SEALs. They were ITs, actually. Shocker. ITs playing D&D. But anyway, though, they were like seeing how bad I was at the time and kind of how not dealing with certain subjects, and I was coping poorly. And one of my really good buddies, Pat, he was like, dude, come over to our house.
So before this, you had no D&D experience or anything?
I did like fantasy novels.
Okay.
Like I read.
You're a big reader.
One of my first books I ever read, full novels I ever read, was like The Hobbit when I was a little kid. Dad was a huge reader. He was insistent that I read, and I'm glad he made me, because I still have a passion for books today. I'm reading like 6 books at once right now. And I think there's big value in reading in general. I think, guys like Benjamin Franklin, like he never went to organized school. He educated himself by reading. Period. So I just think there's really big value in reading in general and just keeping your mind sharp and stuff. But
sorry, I lost your train.
Yeah.
So IT guys.
Yeah. So dabbled in nerd stuff before this. Never actually went that hard, right? And so they invite me over. They're like having a couple beers, but they've got this big table set up with like maps on it and these little miniature characters and stuff. And I'm like, what have I gotten into? I'm like, what is happening right now?
They're going to put a hex on me.
Yeah. And my buddy Pat's like, just shut up and sit down and just try to enjoy it, man. And I had like one of the most fun nights I had in years.
Wow.
I mean, I went from being pretty somber and like fake happy to genuinely enjoying myself all night.
Like immersing yourself.
And then their DM or GM, or for anybody out there that doesn't know what that is, it's a dungeon master or game master. It's the person who runs the game. You're kind of like you're the arbiter of the story and the arbiter of the rules. You're not actually playing, but you kind of are. And you have players that are the party.
Or you're like the narrator.
Yeah, you're creating the story. You're creating their conflicts they go through, and you're putting obstacles in front of them for them to overcome. And they lost theirs. Theirs was like, oh, I can't do this anymore. And one of them calls. I had been dabbling in writing a book for years.
Wow.
And never had really followed through with it. I had made outline after outline and character arcs and all this stuff, and I had a ton of material, but never wrote it. And I was always too busy. So it just was like a half project. And my buddy was like, knowing this about me, was like, hey man, would you think about like DMing for us and just, use your world that you already created in your book that you're writing? And I'm like, yeah, dude.
Nice.
And I just, like I do, I don't, anything worth doing is worth overdoing. So I'm like, I go all in. I buy all the books. I buy all the source books immediately. I'm learning about like previous editions and the history of Dungeons and Dragons and like learning all the rules and then fleshing out my world to be usable for a game. And then, yeah, we actually just wrapped up of like a 5-year campaign.
No, that's awesome.
With some of those same guys. But,
that's awesome.
But yeah, man, it became a hugely positive thing for me. I know that there's a lot of Christians out there that are very against D&D. And I always like to touch on this a little bit just because I find it to be a little strange. And, there's obviously some extreme Christians out there that are like against everything. However, I do agree in certain aspects of it. There are some, because I think what you consume, you tend to become, right? So if you're consuming negative stuff all the time, you're going to be pretty negative. If you are not doing any things we've been talking about, like challenging yourself physically and mentally, you're going to become less sharp, right? So same thing goes for D&D. You can play the game in a way that can be, I guess, somewhat demonic. You can play the game in a way that's super negative and crappy. Players can basically be bad guys if they want to. They can just be horrible people. It's like real life in a fantasy world that you create, right? So the character could be like, hey, I want to steal everything from all these poor people in this village. And you just are like, oh, okay, are you sure you want to do that, man? So it's kind of it can be a weird cesspool for people to live out negative fantasies in a game setting, but that's not the kind of game I play, right? It's not the kind of game I run. So, and also there's characters in the game where you can like make a contract with a devil and legitimately get magic that way, right? So that's like straight up wrong, right? You know, like I can totally see where Christians are against those aspects of the game. But I would also say fantasy's fantasy. It's not real. We're not creating a circle and like trying to summon devils.
Right.
Like, that's not what's happening. It's you're rolling dice and being nerds and having community together. I run a pretty Christian game too. So like, actually, if you were atheist and were in my game, you'd have no idea, but you're being peppered with like biblical values.
There you go.
And it's in there. It's just kind of like subtle. And then I have an actual like full on Christian game I run with some other buddies. That's like straight up. We're working through like biblical stories and stuff like that. But like my version of it. But yeah, huge nerd.
That's awesome.
But we actually are about to switch to a game called Draw Steel. It's a handful of guys that used to work for Dungeons and Dragons, Hasbro. But because Hasbro's kind of gone away, they've taken up too much of Dungeons and Dragons. They run Magic the Gathering too, the card game, which my kids play, and they've gone so high corporate with it that it's kind of obvious that the company doesn't really care about its fans anymore. They're using AI art and stuff, and like there's some not good things going on in the community right now, and also trying to like take away the licenses so content creators can't create things in that world. So a lot of us have been like going away from Dungeons and Dragons, which is a shame because it's like the gateway that got a lot of people into tabletop gaming in general. And I'm not taking away. I think all the editions are great in their own way, and there's always going to be negativity and always going to be people that kind of ruin that. But the game itself is great,
Right.
but it's done that to us too. So we're veering away and going to trying out other games. There's tons of other stuff out there. There's tons of people creating stuff all the time. So we're switching to that. It's a couple guys that used to work for previous editions and have written content for other games before, and they kind of just came together and were like, why are we creating content for this game that we didn't make? So they're like, we're going to make our own.
Nice.
And their Kickstarter like blew up and they did really well. So we're switching to that.
That's awesome.
But
Cool,
yeah,
man.
That's cool.
and I am writing my book now.
Nice.
I'm at 81,000 words as of like right before I came here.
Wow.
No, I guess last night was when I was writing, but yeah.
What kind of is it? What genre? Not genre, but is
It's
it
fantasy.
Fantasy?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's the book I've been trying to write
Yeah?
for years, man. It's
That's awesome.
it'll be fun, man. It's not a Navy SEAL book. It's not like here's the best key of leadership. Here's the life for a Navy SEAL. It's none of that stuff. It's a total nerd book, man. It's like, granted, drawing from my life experiences. So the character goes through one of the main characters goes through a lot of what I've gone through in my life. The other side characters are somewhat aspects of people I know and or myself. And I'm writing what I know.
Right.
So it's a fantasy world I made up. It's a world I built, and obviously there's definitely biblical values peppered in there too. There's definitely got like that aspect to it of empowerment and good values and stuff. The characters aren't turds. Well, actually, some of them are, and they turn themselves around, and like there's some of that too. So
That's awesome.
but yeah, so I'm having fun doing that. I haven't named it yet, but I'm getting close to a completion, and I'll have a
I'm sure it'll come to you.
legit edition to send out to people at some point.
That's
But
pretty cool, man.
yeah,
That's cool.
Here at the Barracks Life, we have a tradition. We like to connect our guests to previous guests and future guests. I would like you to draw 2 questions from this bowl here and answer them. These are questions from the previous guests. So draw from this bowl, 1 question at a time. Please read it out loud and answer it.
all right. What do we got? Actually, let me see the artwork in this bowl. Oh, it's from Thailand.
Yeah.
Nice. Is this a bowl you like gathered throughout your travels?
Petru.
Petru? Nice, man. That's cool.
Yeah, he was in Thailand.
I like it. All right, what do I got here? All right. Are military acquired skills recognized by employers, or do they feel overlooked? Yeah. This is a question that I've been mulling over for the last 6 months and really digging into deeply. And I guess I could have spoken about it earlier. So thank you, bowl of questions.
We're gonna label
But,
that now, bowl of questions.
Yeah, absolutely. The civilian world 100% does recognize skills from the military. Caveat, big caveat. you have to be able to translate what those are.
Yes.
If you cannot quantify what those skills are, then how can anybody else identify them?
Right.
So that's one of the biggest things that I had to realize. There are tons of things I've learned, tons of things that I do on a day-to-day basis for the last 20 years that totally translate to another industry.
Mm-hmm.
But if I wasn't able to quantify that and tell somebody in non-military terms, it's useless, right? Nobody has any idea where to plug me in. So if I could give advice on how to better do that right off the bat, as you're getting ready to transition out of the military, learn business acumen, build up your vocabulary, learn how to speak civilian, learn how to, instead of saying fire team leader, you're like team leader. That's a silly one, but CO is a CEO kind of thing, like that kind of stuff. Those are the easy ones, but there's a ton of like, what's the big freaking really overused business term right now? Cross-functional training, right? Like we do cross-functional training in the military all the time, but if you don't know how to use that word, that phrase, then what you say or how you tell your little story, the civilians are like, what are you talking about right now? But if you drop that buzzword cross-functional training, they're like, ooh, they get a little business,
They're like, what?
They're like, oh my gosh, this guy sounds really squared away. And it's not about sounding squared away. It's about you actually are. Like you do have those skills. You just need to learn how to translate them to somebody who's doesn't know all the acronyms and doesn't know all the day-to-day that you went to, because you can't in an interview tell them your life story, right? It's not a podcast.
We say it all the time in the military or even the business world, learn how to sell yourself.
Yeah.
And in that sell yourself is learn how to talk how the hiring agent talks. So that way you can sell yourself to them.
Oh yeah. Little things like actually pulling out the job description of what you're applying for, like that kind of stuff is so valuable, man.
Yeah.
Like just go to the website or the business's website where they're looking for people and pull the role that you're actually looking for's description, because every company does that, out and actually quantify out what that means and why you want it.
Right.
And if you can just do that, you're so much more prepared for an interview and to be able to translate what you can offer them, because that's what you're really doing. They're not looking for you because they need you. That's a fallacy, man. They need anybody that can fill that role. The company does not need you specifically. There's a ton of people that are qualified that can do that same job you're doing. Oh gosh, who was it? I want to drop this name because it's a really good mentor I've had throughout my transition portion. I need to reach out, and I guess I'm blanking his name right now, but what he looked me dead in the eyes when I was in the Honor Foundation, it was like, what is if I have two clones of you, or two people with exactly the same experience, exactly the same resume, what is the only difference between them hiring you and hiring the guy sitting next to you? And I was like, and he's like, likability.
Yep.
Period. Like your ability to translate all those things that you've got on your resume in a likable way that makes people relate to you is the difference. Like you can have the same exact resume. You can have a worse resume than somebody else and get hired because the other person walks in as like a jerk to the person that checked him in and throws a piece of trash on the ground and doesn't shake the person's hand. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're not like head on a swivel looking at the environment you're in and integrating. Every place has got a culture.
Right.
And you have to be able to, not change who you are, because that should stay at a core, but know your environment.
Right. Know your environment.
Yeah.
Be respectful. Just
Yep.
be a humble, respectable person.
Yeah. And be able to talk about what you did.
Right.
Not just like, I blew up stuff for 20 years, which is what I was like thinking.
I fix helicopters. I turn wrenches.
Yeah. Like, it just sounds so dumb.
Yeah.
But there's tons of stuff you learned throughout that time, your time, and you just have to be able to quantify it.
Awesome.
It's a good question, whoever wrote that. Good job.
Bravo,
Zulu.
Bowl of questions.
Yeah.
You ready for question 2?
Absolutely.
All right.
Let's do it. Wow. This is a heavy question. What hopes and dreams did you have before enlisting? Were they achieved? Yeah, I mean, in some ways, yes. In some ways, no. I mean, joining the military certainly changes your trajectory, like drastically, right? One of the most impactful things my mom ever said to me was like, hey, don't let the military change you too much, which was an impossible thing to ask of me because you don't even realize how much it changed you. And that's everything you do, really. I mean, like we were talking about culture 2 seconds ago. Whenever you join any job or team or anything, there's a culture within that place and you integrate to it, right? I mean, there's people that have never been to Australia, go there for a month and come back with an Australian accent.
Correct.
Like you've integrated into the culture a little bit, right? Like inadvertently, just by being there and being surrounded by it. It's not like to disrespect it or for any particular reason. It just starts happening because you're surrounded by it. So yeah, it automatically does that, right? It automatically changes you just joining the military, just being introduced to the culture of the military. And then you add that to a really elite, small unit like the SEAL teams, and it does it even further. So it simultaneously fulfilled a dream of mine, just achieving becoming a SEAL, right? That was a huge goal of mine. There was no other thing I wanted to do as far as, like, as soon as I learned about it, I wanted to do it. That was my goal in the military. So I achieved that. However, it also immediately limited me and kind of honed me into never achieving other goals that I had, right? So once I made that decision, it's not like I'm going to play hockey ever again. I mean, for fun, I still play here and there. I still play in some old man leagues and stuff like that and get together with some of the guys. But no. I mean, I didn't achieve every single goal that I wanted to achieve. I didn't, I wanted to be a Master Chief one day. I wanted to like retire as a Master Chief, get my anchor in 2 stars, and like that never happened. So there's definitely some portions that never came to fruition. And of course, it limited me from a lot of my like civilian side goals. Like I never finished college. I was like 2 years in and just stopped all that to be a SEAL. It took too much focus. Yeah, I am. Yeah. I'm in the middle of it right now. But yeah, so I guess, yes and no. But that was a good question, man. Those are good.
So now that you've answered 2 questions from our bowl of questions, what are 2 questions you have for the next guest?
I gotta for a second here.
No worries, take your time.
Because there's obviously like the easy ones.
Yeah, you don't know what kind of guest is going to be on here, so.
Yeah, right. That's what I mean, all these different options go through my head right now. I'm mission planning the crap out of this right now. I'm like, who could it be? Do they have a faith walk? Are they in the military? What?
And it's gonna go in there. You don't know what it's gonna.
Who's gonna pull it too?
I don't know. When I asked my question, it was kind of crazy.
Let's see. Because I don't want it to be too hyper specific, then it doesn't like make sense for the person that pulls it. I guess.
Just send it.
You know what I'm gonna do? Speaking of AI, I'm gonna see what ChatGPT thinks, taking into consideration me and everything it knows about me.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you have a dialogue already built up?
Oh yeah, I've gotten hugely into this. Nice. My ChatGPT is like built out.
Nice. So I'm on a podcast right now, and he's asking me to ask 2 questions.
All right, let's see. Let's see what we got here. What 2 impactful questions could I ask somebody to learn more deeply about them? That's what my prompt was. These aren't bad. I actually like both of them. Good job, ChatGPT. You know me well.
All right, Patrick, you ready?
So, first one is, what's something that shaped you into the person that you are today? I like that a lot.
Nice. That's a good one.
Yeah. And then the second one is, what right now in your life do you care about the most and why? That's a really good one. Ooh, I like that a lot.
That is a good one.
It's a hard one to answer, though, because it's like I feel I care about so many things that I'm like, how do I pick one?
Mm-hmm. How do you pick one without offending anybody?
I feel like if a question makes you go, oh, gosh, and like short circuits you for a minute, it's a good question,
For sure.
Cool.
Well, that's our podcast. I appreciate you coming here, taking the time, and
man.
Just being here. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Great conversation.
To our listeners, remember that every service member's journey is unique, yet together they form a rich tapestry of military life. Join us next week for another compelling story from the Barracks Life. Until then, this is former Sergeant Kit Levon, United States Marine Corps, reminding you that where boots hit the deck, stories take flight.